Hey Truckers, here is part 3 of Supremacy games. Let's dive into the video. Inside the cab that was heading towards the Bloodline Market, Felix rested his hand under his chin as he stared at the view outside absent-mindedly. He was thinking of the best way possible to spend his newly obtained capital. He first decided that 10 million SC would be used as capital for future bets. Meanwhile, the remaining 70 million would be spent on the Tier 4 Bloodline. Hopefully, an epic ranked one. As for the leftover coins, he planned to use them as payment for the resources he pre-purchased yesterday. 7 minutes later, he entered the public Bloodline Market that was packed with rowdy people just like ever. Felix kept walking step by step while browsing the stalls and shops. But he never bought a thing, he just marked the items which pleased him and left them be. He couldn't afford to waste even a single coin from his bloodline capital. 70 million might sound a lot, but Felix knew that it wasn't enough to even buy him a rare Tier 5 bloodline. Don't even mention Tier 6 and 7. However, he was satisfied with Tier 4 for now. At least, his abilities would be much stronger than his peers in the same realm. After half an hour of constant browsing, Felix reached a tight, well-lighted alley. He had been walking before towards this specific alley. His browsing and marking were merely a side activity he did on the way. Hopefully, that greedy bastard is still open at this time. Irked, Felix spat on the floor and entered the alley. The image of the shop owner he was on his way to visit ruined his day instantly. Alas, he could only suck it up and tread through the maze-like alleys. After a while, he stopped in front of a clean-looking brick wall with frowned eyebrows. Seconds passed by and Felix just stood frozen in front of it. Fuck me, just do it and get it over with. His frowned eyebrows eased up a bit. He let out a long despairing sigh and without warning, he head-butted the brick wall 3 times and called out loud while gritting his teeth. Luby, the most handsome male in the universe, is not a greedy person. I came to buy and not to insult. Felix backed away from the wall and massaged his red forehead that had throbbing veins. Well, anyone would be angered if had to say such embarrassing hidden code to access the shop. A few moments later, the brick wall vibrated, like it was being assaulted by an earthquake. This caused fissures to course through it, drawing an image of a goblin head. Suddenly, the eyes of the goblin materialized and gazed at Felix with a dreadful look. Felix rolled his eyes at the sight and ignored that garbage attempt of scaring him. Kid, who sent you here? I only deal with regulars, and for you to know the secret method to enter my shop, you either must have received a referral or a spy sent by one of my rivals, so out with it. Why you are here? A frightful husky voice echoed 3 times in the tight alley. Felix, unbothered by it, extended his middle finger towards the image and said, Greedy dog, are you still not opening up after I said that embarrassing passcode? He threatened, if you don't let me enter in 3 seconds, I will make sure to tell all your rivals the passcode. He smirked, good luck calling your regulars to tell them that you upgraded your shameful code to a better version of it. I bet they would love it. Cough, handsome mister, no need to be so mean. Come, I was just playing with you. Threats are unnecessary. The horrifying husky voice immediately changed into a pleasing fawning one. Felix sneered and dashed straight into the brick wall, unworried about getting harmed. The instant he did so, the promised sound of the collision did not occur, but only water ripples were left on the surface of the wall. Seconds later, it got hardened back to its original state. The fissures withdrew like snakes entering their holes, leaving the brick wall with a brand new outlook. Nostalgic, Felix nodded his head in appreciation at the massive interior of the shop that was packed with rows upon rows of shelves, each with plenty of unique items. Yet, the majority of them were bottles filled with different liquids. Some of those bottles were small, while some were as big as a 5-liter water bottle. Felix couldn't help but chuckle after seeing small horned elves not reaching even his knees, running back and forth in the empty shop like they were extremely busy. "What are you laughing at, kid? You never saw a successful business before?" A short blue-skinned goblin with long dropped ears, big wide nose, and toothless narrow mouth, stood in front of Felix and inspected him with interest using his left eye, as his right one was hollow inside. Find you chapters on nv/lbi.com. Felix crouched down until he was face to face with the blue-skinned goblin and scoffed in his face. "Greedy looby, how dare you have the face to call this desolate shop successful? It seems like your brazen prices were about to force you to shut down." Unbothered by his mocking tone, Looby shrugged his shoulders with his hands spread wide and smiled politely. "Dear unknown guest, I did not invite you here to buy from me. It was you who knocked on my doorstep without even a referral letter." He extended his thin blue finger and added, "Plus, you came to purchase my items knowingly they are overpriced. Mind telling me why is that, or should I tell you myself?" Felix's eyelids couldn't help but twitch at this bastard counterattack. But he was not planning to brood over this matter forever. The only reason he mocked Looby was to vent some of his anger at being required to use that humiliating passcode. "All right, Looby, enough humble bragging, and remove that fake polite smile." Felix went straight to business. "I came here to buy an epic tier 4 poison bloodline. Go bring me all the stock you have, and also bring rare ranks as well." Looby's gentleman manners immediately were thrown in the sewers as he licked his lips like a vampire ready to devour all of Felix's hard-earned coins. He didn't have Greedy Looby as a nickname for no reason. Felix's shoulders couldn't help but tense at this sight. He knew that he needs to bring his A game during the negotiation. Otherwise, he would leave the shop but naked, without a single dim in his account. "Give me 5 minutes and all my stock will be in front of you." Looby rubbed his hands together and added while eyeing the shelves, "Meanwhile you can browse my bloodline item collection. You might find something that pleases you." Without waiting for Felix's response, he swiftly bolted towards the back of the shop, while calling for the little cute deer elves to follow him. Felix didn't need Looby's reminder, as he was planning to examine those items in the first place. He walked near the shelves while examining the items one by one. He kept commentating on the ones he found interesting. "Oh ho! A Greykeeper bear claw that can be merged with an arm and used to increase the power of claw abilities? Not bad." He nodded as he held a sharp-looking gray claw. Works best if the bloodline integrated with was the keeper bear itself. "Whoa, that greedy dog actually got hold of this. What a lucky bastard. If he sold it to a desperate person, he might rip him off with double to triple the price." Felix exclaimed as he appraised with wide eyes, a unique-looking penis that was constantly changing its size and shape, based on the thoughts of the holder. One can easily infer how well received this item would be for men. 3 minutes later, Looby came back holding 4 bloodline bottles, 2 in each hand, while his minions each held 1 bottle. "Dear customer, my entire poison stock is here." Looby put the bottles on a desk and said with a solemn tone, "Please take your time in your choice. I don't mind waiting. Just make sure that the bloodline you choose is perfect for your future path." Looby's warning was genuine, as every time a young lad paid a visit to his shop, he only leaves after buying the most expensive bloodline there was in the shop, not caring if the beast he picked had a good rapport with him. Their ignorance resulted in them having at least their strength lowered by 30%. The synergy between the bloodline and the host must never be disparaged, as each beast had abilities specifically made for a unique fighting style. Some beasts preferred using their body parts as their main source of power, while their element provided assistance. While some were the total opposite, as they relied heavily on their elemental abilities to fight their battles. Those beasts preferred keeping distance. Those young kids only realized this fact after the deed was already done. This led to only one result, and that was forcing them to hasten their integration to replace the bloodline, totally ignoring building a solid foundation. Felix knew all of this as well, thus Luby's advice meant nothing to him. But he still appreciated his warning. "Thanks for the advice. But don't worry, I already know what I am doing." He smiled and requested, "Now can you clear the room for me, so I can focus on my choice please?" "Got it." Luby clapped his hands twice and went upstairs, followed by his minions. Slam! Felix's focus was brought to the 10 bottles before him after hearing the sound of the door gets closed. He held the first one and scanned it with his bracelet. Soon, all the details of it were shown as a hologram. / bloodline name, 100-legged poisonous tarantula. Tier, 4. Rank, rare. Passive abilities pool, paralyze poison immunity, skin hardening, night vision, wall crawling, finger flexibility, etc. Active abilities pool, organic webbing shot, penetrative fingers, sleep inducement bite, web cocoon seal, etc. History: the tarantula is a spider-type beast that uses poison element and silk element. Its current habitat is rainforests in rainy Kindrian planet that is near the edges of the Andromeda Galaxy, //. Felix shook his head and closed the hologram. He was never a spider-type lover. He preferred snakes and serpents beasts, just like in his previous life. He had a good rapport with them, and he wouldn't change the species, just because he had a fresh start. It was always better to learn from experience than to try new things all over again, wasting a ton of time just to be edgy. So, he excluded every bottle that had a bloodline of a different species, leaving only bottles that had snakes and serpents bloodline on the table. As he read the details of each of those bloodlines, he kept shaking his head in disappointment over the current stock. Am I just unlucky to end up with this trashy stock, or Luby lied and did not bring his best? Confused and disappointed, Felix tapped his finger on the table as he eyed the last bottle. He truly began to believe that Luby brought him a shitty stock because he was not a regular customer. Sigh, I hope the last bottle is at least somewhat good. Felix already stopped thinking about buying the best. At this point, he just wanted something that fits him. He was not one of those bloodliners who chase after the perfect bloodline. Unlike them, Felix understood clearly that chasing after the perfect bloodline was the same as chasing after the perfect girl to marry, something that was clearly an illusion. Oh ho ho! However, the moment he saw the details of the last bottle, his crooked vision about the perfect bloodline couldn't help but adjust a little. Just like love at first sight, he knew this was the bloodline he would awake with. Tier, 4. Rank, epic. Passive abilities pool, superhuman strength, mild poison resistance, infrared vision, skin shed, infection immunity, etc. Active abilities pool, venom spit, strangle, instant devour, tail lash, toxic miasma, dizziness swamp, absolute defense, etc. History: the Anamamba is a serpent-type beast that uses poison element. Its current habitat is the Death Valleys on the planet Venusis. No more information has been obtained, //. This was it, the best current bloodline to awaken with, since every better option was either too expensive for Felix, or not his type. As for the passive and active abilities pools, there were few low-tier abilities, such as skin shed and venom spit. But the majority was tier 4. So, it just depends on his luck to unlock them. Wholly satisfied, Felix put the bottle within the stock and picked a random epic rank bottle. Then with an elated voice, he called out loud, "Luby comes here, I have made my choice." Slam! Luby smashed the door with his leg and bolted down the stairs with his little legs, not afraid of tripping. Meanwhile, the cute deer elves hugged the staircase metal bar and slid down rapidly. Thump thump. Their plump bodies were hurled into a cushion right before the stairs. They truly prepared everything to rush downstairs. I am glad you fancied one of my bloodlines. Tell me which one is it so I can deliver it to you. Luby rubbed his hands with a wide grin, exposing his toothless mouth. This one, the red mother centipede, an epic rank beast. Tell me its price first. I know that you add at least 30% extra on the market price of the bloodline. Felix's hand tightened on the bottle with of desperation on his eyes. Yet, in the blink of an eye, those low-key hints were gone just like magic. Out with it, how much? He coughed. Luby with his experience did not miss such hints. But he said nothing about them, he just blinked at Felix with honest expression. Well, even though I add 30% extra, you do know that it is fully justifiable since my bottles always contain 75% or more bloodline essence of the beast. He gave a half shrug, but if you bought from other shops with the market price, don't blame me when you find the bottle you bought only had 10% essence. At that moment you won't have tears to cry over. His eyes turned stern real quick, as he advised him. Trust me on this one, it is never a good option to gamble with your bloodline path. Just pay extra and secure a safe path. Felix couldn't help but nod in affirmation. He knew that everything Luby just said was completely true, as not everyone was able to extract 75% plus bloodline essence from a beast. The only ones who were able to handle such a remarkable feat were top-notch professional extractors. An occupation worthy of respect and admiration, as only the brightest and most intelligent humans could have a chance to work in that field. After all, the job relies on having a vast amount of knowledge about beasts' genes, habitat, family tree, and more of such deep detailed information. Because to extract bloodline essence that had the beast inherited power and abilities from its parents, one must first be able to locate and study them. Then seize those genes and put them in a bottle. The more experience and talent an extractor had, the more percentage he would be able to extract. If it wasn't for those talented people, the beast blood would simply appear as liquid-like in every species. It was only due to them that the term bloodline emerged in the first place. However, just like in every career, job, and occupation, there were always amateurs and stupid sheep who had absolutely zero clues on what the fuck they were doing. Find PT Tez on n/VLN.cm. Those amateurs were dominating this occupation with their massive numbers. They read a couple of studies here and there, do a little research and experiments for a couple of years, and then graduated with a degree in bloodline extraction. It would be all fine and dandy if it was just so. The real issue was their trash extraction percentage, not reaching even 20%. This meant that the bloodline would end up having 80% of its essence all wasted. The sad thing was that most hunters still hired them to do the deed on the beast they killed since they couldn't afford to hire a professional extractor. What's even more fucked up was that even if they hired them and managed to obtain 80% essence of the beast, who would trust their words and buy it from them when it was easy to fool the AP bracelet scanning feature? One just had to mix multiple essences in one bottle and voila, a fresh 80% plus essence was ready to be served, as a scam. Those bottles were as useless as a fart in a wind tunnel. No one could integrate with a mixed bloodline. That was just impossible, it was debated and tested before. After quite a lot of scams using this strategy, no one bothered to buy bottles, which claimed to have 75% plus essence without validating the seller's reputation first. That was the reason why Luby added 30% on the price. Because he guaranteed the bloodline that the shopper received was the real deal. He built this reputation over 50 years of hard work, and in this kind of business, reputation was everything. All right, stop beating around the bush, just state your price. Hopefully, it is within my budget. Felix gripped his fist tightly and put it in his pocket. Innocent and sincere, Luby enlarged pupils stared at Felix right in the eyes, and just like a puppy said, 100 million SCN. Without even waiting for Luby to finish his sentence, Felix clutched his heart in anguish as he stumbled a step back. His glass heart was shattered at the exorbitant price. Luby, unbothered by Felix's act, scratched his cheek and added, "This is even with a 5% discount since you are shopping here for the first time. I'm really doing you a favor here, kid. I should have expected this, but still your prices are really heart-wrenching." Felix inhaled a deep breath and put the bottle back on the table and said with a reluctant expression, "I apologize, but it seems that I am leaving empty-handed from your shop today." He shook his head. "My budget is really not enough to close the gap. I guess I am not fated for Mother Centipede." Helpless and dejected, he sighed and turned around, walking towards the brick wall. However, before he took 2 steps, Luby lunged at his knee and clung on it with a forced smile. Now, we can always figure something out that benefits both of us. You just have to tell me your budget and I will see what I can do about it. I slaved myself for a couple of years to collect 60 million SC to buy a bloodline worthy enough to integrate with. Now that I found it, my budget failed me." Felix lowered his head with slumped shoulders and said, "So tell me, what can you do to fix this? And just know 60 million is everything I have. I can't add a single coin." Luby's heart instantly sank as he knew that this deal was a lost cause no matter what he said or did. It was impossible for him to reduce 40 million in one go. Even if he removed the extra 20 million that was meant to rip Felix off and leave only the original 80 million, it wouldn't be much to buy his bloodline. "Well, you are right. The gap is too large to close down. I can't do much about it." He pointed his finger at the bloodlines on the table and said with temptation, "But there are still other bloodlines you can buy with 60 million. Just pick another one, and I will give you a great deal." "But I don't want another one." I felt a connection to only Mother Centipede and nothing else moved me. Felix mercilessly hurled Luby towards the desk, like he was getting rid of his slipper, and continued walking forward. "Just forget it, it's better if I went to Sililan's shop. I might find my fateful bloodline there." Crash! Luby's head collided with the corner of the desk harshly. Yet, he felt nothing but rage and humiliation after hearing Felix mention that Sililan had better stock than him. "Close the store. This little bastard is not leaving until he buys a bloodline." He roared with blue blood running down his temple. Befuddled and amused, Felix watched 3 little deer elves blocking his way with 2 hooves extended forward, while the rest were closing down the gate. "What's the meaning of this, Luby? Are you trying to force me to buy from your stock or what?" He crossed his arms with displeased expression and added, "If streets got word of this, your reputation will be tarnished, and we all know business is doomed without it." He turned around and smiled warmly towards the little elves. "So let me leave in peace and I will act as nothing happened." "I don't care, I won't let you leave until you see the prices of those bloodlines." Stubborn, Luby stood up and dusted himself, unbothered about his bloody face. He merely gave Felix a defiant look. "Trust me, you will definitely be pleased by how cheap they are." Felix eyed the bloodlines on the table, then Luby's stubborn expression. He sighed and approached him again. "All right, if your prices are cheap enough not to put a dent on my budget, I will consider getting a bloodline here." He tapped his finger on the table and rushed him. "Hurry up and show me." Without delaying for even a second, Luby brought a rare rank bottle to his face and said, "This one cost merely 35 million SC, quite cheap considering that I usually sell it for 40 million. Pass. This is for 50 million. Pass. This one is 59 million. Pass." After getting 8 bottles disregarded by Felix, Luby started to lose hope of catching his attention. "This one is 57 million epic rank bloodline, its original price is actually 65 million. This is as cheap as it can get." He rubbed his eyebrows and presented the onomombo bloodline that Felix desired. Curious, Felix raised an eyebrow and took the bottle from Luby's hands. "Give me a moment. I want to see its details." He coughed and explained, "Previously, I ignored the rest of the bloodlines after I found the mother centipede. Believe me, this is one of the good bloodlines within the epic ranks. It was extremely hard to catch due to its defense and overwhelming strength." He sighed, "A lot of my hunters have been devoured by it." Yeah, whatever." Felix waved his hand and shooed him away. "Go to the corner and let me read in peace. Your overselling won't move me." Luby immediately shut his mouth and gazed at Felix's expression turn from intrigue to boredom as he read the details of the bloodline. Just as his mind was started to get filled with despairing thoughts, he heard Felix's disinterested voice, "Whatever, I might take this if you lower the price to 55 million. He shook his head. "I will not waste my entire budget on a bloodline that doesn't fit my fighting style that much. So sell it with 55 million, or I am heading to Sililan's shop. This time you can't stop me." He laid his last offer with a firm expression. Luby, unbothered by his tone, nodded his head like a chicken and extended his hand for a handshake. "It's a deal. We can sign a contract right now. Just never buy from Sililan's shop, and I will give you a lifetime 5% discount in my shop." "All right, I see no issue in that. Prepare the contract please, I have other places to be." Felix shook his hand and waited patiently for Luby to prepare the contract. He didn't break out of his indifferent character for not even a moment. A few minutes later, Luby displayed a one-page holographic contract before Felix. There were not too many conditions on it. I see no issues with the terms and conditions. But change one little thing." Felix pointed his finger at the third clause and said, "I will take care of delivery to my planet. Just give me the serial code of the bottle. I will decide when to receive it." "No problem." Luby lightly touched Felix's bracelet and informed, "I have sent it to you. You just need to call delivery company and it will reach your doorstep undamaged." After seeing that everything was perfect, Felix signed the contract with a pleasing smile. He then stood up and bid farewell to Luby as he left through the brick wall. There was no reason to remain anymore. 55 million SC was deducted from his bank account the moment he signed the contract. As for the bottle, he left it inside. What's important was the unique serial code of the product. Immediately after Felix left the shop, Luby did a little dance with excitement written all over his face. "Go prepare a small party. Today we celebrate this victory over that cheating bitch," he ordered while biting his lips. If he had teeth he would have gritted them. "You stole my heart, and then stomped on it mercilessly. You stole my job network, and then ruined my reputation, making me hide here like a rat. Now you want to steal my clients as well?" He opened a bottle of wine that was handed to him by the elves and chugged it down fully within few seconds. He wiped his mouth clean with his sleeves and sneered, "In your fucking dream, Sililan. As long as I live, I will climb back to where I was, and I will destroy you. I swear on it. Just wait, you bitch." Heh, to actually give me a 5% permanent discount on my first purchase, he truly hates his ex-wife. Amused and somewhat curious, Felix walked through the alleys with his hand rested on his chin. He had no idea what she did to make him turn into that state each time he heard her name. To the best of his knowledge, they had a massive enmity between them. Massive to the point a customer in his previous life had used the same strategy and worked just like a charm. Yet, the retard didn't keep it to himself but spread it to others, making it public knowledge. After that, everyone tried to take advantage of Luby's hatred by taunting him that his ex-wife had better products and prices than his, to get the same results as Felix's. Unfortunately for them, Luby easily figured out that his secret was in the open after tens of customers mentioned his wife over and over again, thus he blacklisted all of them and anyone who said the name of that bitch in his shop. Now that I have the bloodline, as well as the potions, I can without a doubt awaken smoothly. He folded his hands and prayed for his bloodline to have 80% or 90% essence, so after he integrates all of it, only a few percentages would be left to cover. At that point, he could go buy the bloodline again, but this time cheaper from the public market to finish the 99%. After a while, he exited from the same alley he came from before and submerged himself within the crowd with hands in his oversized dark hoodie. His direction was clear. The resources market. Ring ring. The doorbell echoed in a small shop 2 times, as Felix pushed the door wide open. The shop owner, who was snoring thunderously in his slumber, woke up disoriented by the doorbell ringing. Felix trod forth and stood before the owner. He clapped his hand twice and said, "Mr. Piggy, I am here to pay for the items I pre-purchased yesterday. And also to buy other things." Still muddled, Mr. Piggy rubbed his small eyes and snorted with his pig-like nose out of habit at Felix. "Oh, it's you again." He scratched his messy bearded chin and read from a hologram, "The full amount that we agreed upon was 1.1 million for 7 products. Here is your shopping cart." He enlarged the hologram and made it visible for Felix. // 1. Minor longevity potion allows a commoner user to obtain 300 extra years to live. Also, remarkable at cleaning his body from all diseases and injuries. The price, 850,000 SC. Quantity, 1. 2. Rejuvenation potion. It can heal a commoner/bloodliner back into a healthy state, without any hidden injuries. Works only for bloodliners under stage 2 of replacement. The price, 10,000 SC. Quantity, 3. 3. Double percentage potion allows the user to double the number of bloodlines percentages to integrate with. Pain waves remain the same as before the use of this potion. The price, 200,000 SC. Quantity, 1. 4. Fuchsia's eagle wing substance provides the user with the beast's wings for a limited duration of 15 minutes. The price, 20,000 SC. Quantity, 1. 6. Double-headed viper poison gland can be used to upgrade the user poison resistance, works only if the user has the passive. The price, 20.000 SC. Quantity, 1///. Those are all items that you pre-purchased yesterday. I hope we can finalize the deal now. Mr. Piggy brought all of Felix's products and spread them apart on the table. Satisfied, Felix nodded his head and extended his wrist forward. Mr. Piggy did the same and touched Felix's bracelet to complete the payment transfer and also send all the serial numbers of the products. The contract was already signed yesterday. "All right, Mr. Felix, it was a great pleasure dealing business with you. Now you can roam freely within my shop and wake me up if you liked anything." Exhausted from speaking this much, Mr. Piggy returned to his seat and laid on it in a relaxed manner with his eyes dead closed. A few seconds later, his snores were resounding in the shop again. No wonder it was empty. Such a lazy pig would rather kick customers out than to waste time answering their questions. Unbothered by the snores, Felix browsed the items on the shelves with a finger pressed on his lips. His eyes drifted from a potion to a substance. Yet, nothing grabbed his interest. Mr. Piggy informed him yesterday that new stock was going to be displayed today. That's why he even bothered to browse again. His chapter is up.d by nvel, bin.co/m. Oh. Everlasting youth substance. This is the perfect gift for Auntie and Layla. Delighted, he smiled pleasantly as he held a small bottle filled with pink dust. He knew that nothing would bring more joy to a woman than to keep her youthful looks until death. His aunt and Layla deserved more than just this, based on their unconditional assistance during the island remodel. This was the least Felix could do to repay them. He then took 2 bottles with him and searched the shelves for more useful products. After reading the details of over 30 products, he only picked 4 of them and decided to call it a quit. "Oh, Mr. Piggy, please wake up. I want to add those items to my cart." Felix kept poking Mr. Piggy cheeks, as he called near his ears. With half-closed eyes, drool dripping down his chin, Mr. Piggy pointed his bracelet at the items and scanned them. 2 youth substance, 1 skin hardening potion, 1 invisibility potion. The total is 60,000 SC. Felix paid him the amount and obtained their serial codes. He then bade farewell and left the shop satisfied by his shopping spree. "All right, there is still one more shop I need to visit. Then I can call it a day for now," he thought while heading towards the Lady Boss shop. 1 hour later. Felix sat on the park bench while holding vanilla ice cream in one hand, while the other displayed a holographic list of his items' serial numbers. Should I use a human delivery company, or go for the Wormhole Company Express? Although this question was repeating in Felix's mind constantly, he already knew his choice. The only reason he was brooding over this matter was due to his reluctance to pay the maddening shipment price of the Wormhole Express. But honestly, they justify it by their solid reputation of 100% delivery successful rate. Meanwhile, humans' delivery ships could get robbed by pirates. Felix wasn't worried about losing his items, as he had an insurance policy installed on them that guaranteed that his products would be given back free of charge. However, just like Earthling's insurance companies, the procedures and paperwork would take an extremely long period before they get it done. A typical action by those companies to delay paying their bill as much as possible. Felix wasn't planning to entertain their bullshit at this critical period. He understood that his awakening must be done before the end of the first stage of the training camp. Otherwise, the elders would force him to use their trashy bloodline. Helpless and vexed, he took a large bite from the ice cream cone and closed the hologram. His decision was made. Even though he must pay at least 500,000 SC for the shipment, his items would reach his doorstep in 7 days tops, undamaged. This gave him some peace of mind. After getting that over with, he lifted his head and observed the beautiful scene of multiple subhumans' families, playing with their children in the park. A gentle smile couldn't help but sneak upon his mouth. I should probably buy a house and VR pod after I leave the training camp. He knew that for one to be able to stay permanently within the UVR, a VR pod and a house was a necessity. Felix didn't want to stay inside forever, like some weirdos. But, staying for a couple of weeks to months was no issue to him. Especially, when he joins the Supremacy games. After all, some games might reach tens of hours in duration. Felix definitely didn't want his fate to be the same as the peeing guy. Amused, he guffawed out loud, unbothered by the strange looks he was receiving. How could he not after the memory of a viral game resurfaced in his mind, showcasing a player begging for the MC to pause the game for 2 minutes to take a piss in real life? Sadly, the SG was not a video game where one could click pause. So the poor player had to piss himself in bed and in-game under the humiliating jeers of the audience. However, this was not the reason it went viral but, due to the player managing to clutch the championship at the end. One could only imagine how his face was like during the process of receiving his trophy. From that moment on, not a single player decided to enter a game without a VR pod, and Felix had no thoughts of doing the opposite. Next morning 10 a.m. Felix was eating his breakfast together with Olivia in the cafeteria. He held a cup of orange juice with its straw on close to his mouth. Yet, he didn't take a sip as Olivia's way of eating cookies was distracting him. Who could blame him though? Olivia kept munching on them with her eyes closed, just like a squirrel. Little Ollie, can you not munch on cookies like that? You are ruining the adult image that we worked hard to build. But I can't help it. They are too delicious. She sulked with some crumbles on her lips and cheeks as she gazed at the last cookie on her. Also, I will not change my personality. I love sweet food and I will keep eating them like this. If anyone dares to treat me like a child or bully me, I will bite him. She bared her fangs at him. Helpless yet somewhat amused, Felix could only stare at her eat the last cookie with the same expression. Well, you do you, I guess. After Ollie finished her breakfast, she asked Felix, "Today is Sunday, and we don't have any training to finish. Do you have any fun plans for today?" She smiled with anticipation clearly written all over her face. "I want to accompany you." With a finger pressed on his chin, Felix gazed absent-mindedly after hearing her question. He was pondering if he should head to the cinema in the UVR to entice that lazy bum into reopening the connection between them. After all, Felix was only waiting for the pain relief potions to arrive at the lady boss shop so he could deliver everything home at once. Based on what she said, it would take a max 15 days. This meant Felix's awakening would happen before even a month. That's just around the corner. It was better to start preparing for their future plans now than do so at the moment of awakening. I will probably enter the UVR cinema. Do you want to come as well? EAD new chapter S on no/v/e/ln.com. Bewildered and excited, Olivia suddenly stood up with her hands on the table. Whoa, you can do that? She tilted her head slightly. I thought only the owner of the AP bracelet can enter the UVR. How can you take me in as well? Indeed, I can use the party feature in the bracelet to take as many as 10, and this number is only limited because my bracelet generation is quite old. But there is 4 hours duration limit, and after exceeding it one must start paying 500 SC each hour. Nonchalant, Felix explained as he took quick sips in between. So cool! Felix nodded his head casually and continued eating. However, before he chewed, he sensed Olivia's eyes, digging through his forehead. He lifted his head and saw her toying with a lock of hair, with flushed cheeks. He chuckled and asked, "Do you want to bring anyone else?" Olivia avoided having eye contact and nodded her head softly. "I want to invite Sarah, as she always annoys me that her dream was to enter the UVR." Although Felix explained that he could take 10 people at once, she had a thin face to ask for another favor. In her mind, he already did more than enough by taking her in and paying for her. She wasn't stupid to not understand that cinema tickets were probably expensive for Felix since he wasn't working in the UVR and the family definitely didn't give him an allowance. If only she knew that Felix's leftover coins probably exceeded the family's entire capital, she wouldn't have those thoughts. Do as you wish, as long as the number does not exceed 10, I don't care who you invite. Felix cleaned his mouth with a handkerchief and added, "This is a one-time offer and won't repeat again." He then stood up and headed towards his room while saying, "Come to my room 2 hours from now." "Thank you, Felix. You are the best." Excited and eager to deliver the news, Olivia left the table messy and bolted towards Sarah's room. Felix could only sigh and clear after her. "Don't treat me as a child, my ass," he mumbled under his breath as he carried the trays to the cafeteria's counter. 1 hour and 45 minutes later. Felix sat on his bed with black lines on his forehead. "You old hag, open up already, it is time to awaken, I am only waiting for you." Sadly, just like the last few tries, there was no response. Felix used everything from enticing, to lying and cursing. Yet, nothing managed to move her and re-establish the connection. Livid, he threw the pillow at his TV screen. He truly couldn't handle her bullshit anymore. He never saw such an unreliable and irresponsible partner before. Why can't she act like an elder or mentor and show me the way as I read online? How can I be this unlucky to end up with this lazy pig, who only wants to watch movies and series? He really began to feel that she got too comfortable in his consciousness and lost her motivation to regain her freedom. After a while, he stopped bothering himself with those gentle methods. For someone like Asna, the only thing that worked best was threats and sticks. His expression turned nasty and though, let's see if you will continue to ignore me after I drink memory-erasing potion. Felix was ready to pull all stops and drink that potion to erase his memories of movies and series. At that point, Asna wouldn't be able to enjoy her lazy stay in his consciousness and be active in helping him plan ahead. After all, she said it herself that more information was needed for her to see how to improve the cheats she gave him. But, how the hell was she supposed to get it, when her attention was elsewhere? Suddenly an irritated voice was heard in his mind, "Bastard, can't you take a hint and leave me alone to watch in peace?" She yawned. I already reached episode 200 of the Masked Lady drama series. I was about to talk to you after I finished the last 10 episodes. Felix raised his eyebrows in surprise at her sudden entrance. He didn't think that his threat was going to show a positive result this fast. You went offline for over 6 months, and you only watched 200 EP of that amazing series? He smirked. I finished them in 2 months. You really disappointed me. You dare look down on me while using 2 months to watch that series? You know nothing, little bastard. She puffed her chest out and said, I used 6 months to watch all the movies and series on your memories. The Masked Lady was the last one. She explained with a hint of dread, that's why I was planning to head out since there will be nothing fun to do here anymore after I finish it. Felix didn't notice her voice cracking at her mentioning the last part. His mind short-circuited the moment she mentioned, spending 6 months to finish his colossal liberty of movies and series that took him years upon years of lazing around to gather in his previous life. Yet, such an unfathomable amount was finished in 6 months? What kind of sick joke was this? Horrified, a sudden idea sneaked upon him and took root in his mind. Unless she did not sleep the past 6 months and only watched continuously movie after movie and episode after episode. How can someone be able to do that? Neets around the world will kowtow and worship if they heard of her achievement. Furious at him calling her NET, Asna tried to throw the remote control at the TV like usual, but her hands refused to obey. Her mental energy was drained to the bottom of the barrel, and her sunken face with dark panda eyes only made it appear as such. Throwing the controller or not, she still raged at him, unbothered about her new ugly look. Bastard, are you complimenting me, or insulting me by calling me a NET? She explained with a huff, never associate me those lazy bastards. I only watched movies and series because I was sealed for 20 million years without any entertainment in my life. So I had to close the gap. Now leave me alone to finish those last remaining episodes in peace, I will call you later. She shooed him away with a hand wave and pressed on the play button. Felix hastily informed her before she cut off the connection, tomorrow I need you in your best form and shape. We will try a quick experiment with a poison stone to see if I can absorb the element without a beast's bloodline. He gave a half shrug, maybe it will work since you are merged with me. Whatever, talk later. Asna quickly cut off the connection to focus on the drama. Well, at least she got my message. He scoffed on her TV addiction and lay on the bed with his arms crossed behind his head. She dares says she is not a NET. Knock knock. Before he even found a comfortable position, a sudden door knocks resounded in the room. Felix glanced at his bracelet, they came just in time. Without wanting to keep them waiting, he walked toward the door and opened it slowly with a gentle smile. Yet, his smile stiffened immediately after opening the door wide open. He gawked at 10 of his female cousins, each wearing a different outfit that highlighted her greatest asset. Some wore a short skirt with black stockings on, while some had tight blue jeans on with a t-shirt. The only thing that remained identical was their beauty. Just like Felix, they also inherited good looks from their parents. Exasperated, he closed his eyes and rubbed his eyelids. He just remembered that Sarah had the biggest mouth in the family. Her gossipy personality was truly one of a kind. He knew that he made a big mistake by giving them a whole 2 hours before they enter. As it was enough for Sarah to spread the information and for Olivia's good personality to give in to her cousin's request and bring them to him. He figured as much by looking at Olivia, who was peeking at him with one eye behind Sarah. First, I will place some ground rules, so we won't have issues later. Felix decided to fold before his cousins even said anything. He wasn't a retard to disappoint those ladies' hopeful looks. God knows how would they treat him after. He extended 3 fingers with an indifferent expression. The first rule is, this is a one-time thing, don't expect that I will keep taking you in the UVR each day, I neither have time nor energy. He warned, secondly, when we enter, follow me everywhere I go, since you can get kidnapped inside and get abused those 2 hours until you get kicked out. He turned around and walked inside while saying the last rule with a beseeching tone. Last, please don't point and gawk at anything you see, we don't want to be tagged as country pumpkins. Understood? The young ladies just kept nodding their heads like chicken. Heck, even if he asked them to get naked to activate the party feature, they wouldn't hesitate. At this point, the only thing in their eyes was Felix's AP bracelet. Felix cringed at those looks, as he knew that today wasn't going to be a pleasant experience in the UVR with them. Whatever, we will be wearing a disguise. Even if we get embarrassed, no one will know it is us. Please enter and close the door behind you. Elated and eager, his cousins rushed inside with their hands raised above their heads. Their loud cheers didn't alert anyone, as the rooms were soundproof. The last one to enter was Olivia. She sneaked inside and hid behind Sarah like a shadow. She truly wanted to avoid Felix at all costs. After all, she brought a massive headache to his doorstep when he simply tried to bring her out to hang. I hope he doesn't punish me for it. Worried, she peeked at Felix, who was rubbing his temples with closed eyes, as his brain was being assaulted by their never-ending loud chatter. Felix clapped his hands twice to quieten them down, as well as attract their attention to him. I want all of you to find a place and lay down properly. He explained, you are going to spend about 4 hours inside the UVR. So, choose a comfortable position, lest your muscles ache when you return. Obedient, they listened to his advice and lay down either on the ground or the couch. Not one of them chose the bed, as it was only proper to act like a guest and not as a snobbish girl, wanting only the best. Shortly after, all the girls were in a good comfortable position. Those on the ground had pillows and bedsheets underneath them, so it wasn't actually that bad. Satisfied by their behavior, Felix nodded his head, as his eyes were drifting from one cousin to another. Suddenly, his eyes landed on 2 exposed little feet under his bed. If it wasn't for the toes flinching from time to time, anyone would have assumed that a dead body was lying there. Without a second thought, he knew whose feet were those. But he ignored that hamster and began explaining how the bracelet party feature works. I will visit each of you and touch your forehead with my bracelet. He tapped a few times on his bracelet and continued after bringing out a hologram in front of them. You just say this sentence. He pointed at the hologram that displayed a short sentence that said, I willingly chose to enter the UVR using Felix's AP bracelet, and I accept all the terms and conditions of being a party member. The moment you finish, call in your mind Queen AI, and you will enter my UVR room directly. He smiled, after you enter, don't panic or anything, as I will follow you in soon. Simple, right? Yes, Felix, can we start? I can't wait any longer. Eager and nervous, Sarah breathed ruggedly as she eyed his bracelet. Sarah, Can you not say that while breathing in that way? If anyone heard you without knowing what's going on, will definitely misunderstand you. She is right, get hold of yourself, Sarah, you are shaming us with you in front of Felix. A tall ginger flower poked Sarah's cheeks with a playful smile. Sarah slapped her finger away and kept eyeing Felix's bracelet with the same look, unbothered about their teasing. Brother Felix, don't listen to their rubbish. They are just wasting time. She pointed her finger at her face and asked with a cute smile, can you start with me? I already memorized what I need to say. Felix nodded his head and approached her. He also wanted to get this over with. After reaching her side, he crouched next to her and touched his bracelet with her forehead. Sarah did exactly as he instructed them before without a single mistake. Immediately after she called Queen AI, her eyes got closed shut as she lost consciousness. Whoa! Surprised by how efficient and quick the process was, the girls exclaimed with hands on their cheeks. Just as Felix wanted to instruct them to lay down, they circled him and kept chirping little birds. Me next. No, me. Pick me, Felix. Vexed at their chatter and hands touching him here and there, Felix raised his head and stared at the ceiling deep in thought. What did I get myself into? After waiting a while, a clear order was still not established. Every cousin was more unforgiving than the other. Felix was the one who felt burnt of their terrifying bickering, as he was in the center of it. Discover dated novels on NOV/E/Lbin.co. Enough! He shouted as he rubbed his temples. It was really a stupid mistake letting them handle it without his interference. I will count to 3. If I found any one of you not in her position, don't blame me for leaving you last. He crossed his arms above his chest and began counting. The girls whined at his stern treatment, but they still didn't dare to disobey. Within seconds, all of them were lying on their position with burning anticipation in their torch-like eyes. Satisfied at their obedience, he smiled and touched their foreheads one by one gently. The girls repeated the same sentence and lost consciousness. The entire scene appeared just like a cult ritual. One could only wonder what the parents of those girls would say if they saw their daughters lying defenseless like this, in front of Felix. Before long, Felix sent them all in succession. He dusted his hands with a pleased expression and went to the bed, planning to enter after them. However, his eyelids couldn't help but twitch at the sight of those 2 feet still there unmoving. He totally forgot about that troublemaker. Are you still not coming out, Ollie? He kicked the left side rails of the bed lightly, trying to scare her. Thud. Ouch! The yelp he was expecting was replaced by a groan as Olivia's head collided with the bottom rail of the bed. Are you all right? Aggrieved, Olivia rubbed her red forehead and replied with watery eyes, I think my forehead cracked in half. I can feel blood gushing outside. Felix chuckled at her attempt to make him feel bad, so he wouldn't yell at her for bringing him trouble. However, the girls were waiting for them and it wasn't time for those word games. Thus, Felix grinned and grabbed her little feet that were outside the bed and dragged her out. Ah! Olivia cried in surprise, as she clawed the carpet, trying to clutch into her dear life. Unfortunately, Felix didn't even give her the time to fight it out, before he threw her into the bed. Get in position so I can start the process. Your sisters are waiting inside. Felix ordered with unquestionable voice. Olivia immediately hid under the bedsheet and explained what led to this mess. I'm sorry, Sarah told Megan, and Megan told another one. It kept going this way until all of them begged me to enter the UVR as well. I couldn't say no to their request. Sore. Felix cut her mid-sentence, not waiting for her to finish her second apology. No need to feel sorry. I already told you that you are allowed to bring a maximum of 10 people. He sighed, I just didn't expect you to only bring your sisters. Now enough mopping and wasting time, get into position and follow my instruction, he said while pulling the sheets away, exposing Olivia who was curled up like a worm, trying to hide her existence. Olivia instantly fixed her position and lay properly on the bed. All right, you can start now. Felix did the same to her as others, and soon after, she passed out as well. Felix pushed her to the side to make some space and lay next to her. Log me in, Queen, please. Inside the white room, 10 young ladies were conversing with suppressed tones as their eyes wandered around. Sarah kept touching every wall with a hint of fanatism in her eyes. It feels so real. She put her face on the cold surface of the floor and let out a comfortable sigh. This is the best day of my life. The rest totally ignored this weirdo and continued their chatter. It had already been 10 minutes since they entered and Sarah never stopped those shameful acts. They only hoped she would get a grip and not do the same when Felix arrived. Speak of the devil and he shall appear. Felix's body reassembled from light particles in the center of the room, marking his successful teleportation. The reason he was late was due to him needing to rush into the teleportation company from the park where he last logged out. The moment he appeared in the middle of the room, all the ladies quietened up and waited for him to speak. I will teleport you all to the capital city Androxa. The first thing you need to do is to immediately leave the teleportation circle after you reach the city. He explained, each delayed second will cost me 200 SC. This is important, don't forget it. Felix didn't want them to get cheated out of his money, since they were in his party. That meant he was responsible for their actions. Although 200 SC was peanut in his eyes, he couldn't show so. Otherwise, the ladies would spread out rumors that he was rich within the UVR. It wouldn't matter if his cousins heard about it, but the elders were a different story. He understood clearly that showing his bank account was unquestionable if the elders asked him to. At that point, he could only create another empty bank account and show it to them. Felix wanted none of this nonsense to happen in the first place, so he was going to act as cheap as possible. The young ladies shared hidden eye contact with a confused expression. They clearly didn't understand a thing of what he said. But they still nodded their heads with knowing smiles. Felix understood their thoughts clearly, but he preferred it this way, as it meant less time for explaining. Queen AI, teleport us please. As you wish, Mr. Felix. Felix opened his eyes in the circle and immediately went to pull any cousin he saw outside of the circle. Even though they had random faces, Felix easily recognized them, as they had a green halo on top of their heads, visible to only him. A few moments later he looked at the troublemaker Olivia and Sarah with his hands behind his back. What the hell, why is it always you two, whenever there is an issue? He scolded them with a fake angry tone. I clearly stated that you need to bounce out of the circle as fast as possible. So why the fuck were you both in it for an extra 6 seconds? One of you was frozen due to shock, and the other was touching everything in curiosity. Those 6 seconds cost me at least 2,400 CS total. His voice wasn't loud, as he didn't want to attract attention to them this early. He was just acting like this to let them further realize that he was a poor pauper. Ashamed and apologetic, Sarah and Olivia lowered their heads while fiddling their fingers. The other sisters gloated at them getting scolded like little children. After seeing this positive response, Felix decided it was enough and patted their heads to comfort them. All right, stop mopping. You only have 4 hours inside. He smiled, we will walk on foot so you guys can take a closer look at the culture of the UVR. He turned around and walked ahead of them. He waved his hand and said, follow me closely and don't point your finger at anyone, since you won't know if he is a normal commoner or a peak stage 6. The ladies formed 2 lines and followed him from behind, like ducklings following their mother hen. This strange scene piqued the interest of every passerby who saw it. Amused and bewildered, they kept pointing their fingers at Felix's group, while whispering with hushed tones. Yet, that was as far as they did. No one came to bother or harass them, simply because it wasn't their business. People in the UVR were exactly the same as New Yorkers in this characteristic. They recognized that for them to live longer in the city, minding their own business was a must-craft to master. After 35 minutes of continuous walking and answering all of his cousin's questions and inquiries, Felix's dispirited eyes instantly brightened up as he saw the cinema in front of him. Eager to send them inside to get rid of them, he bolted towards it while calling for his ducklings to follow him. However, the long queue before the entrance shattered his uplifted spirit. He knew that paying to skip the line was out of the question. After all, how could he explain himself after paying 500 SC for each cousin to pass the queue with him? Thus Felix could only hang his head low and continue getting tortured by their never-ending questions. Someone save me out of this hell. 45 minutes later. Felix entered the cinema that was designed just like a large tuna fish made of see-through glass. The entrance was actually its mouth. It just wasn't that clear before, due to the building's massive size. Let's go see the movie list for now. Hopefully, something might be worth our tickets. Felix gave each of them a hologram to read. He then sat on the lounge couch and read the list with a bored expression. It turned out he already saw most of the movies released during this month. As he was scrolling down the list, he felt someone tugging his shirt. Confused, he turned his head and saw Olivia and the rest were either looking at him with abashed expressions or avoiding having eye contact at all. The moment he saw their behavior, he knew something was not right. "What's wrong with you? Did you not like those movies?" However, the response he received managed to ruin his already fucked up mood even further as he realized that he wasted his coins on bringing retards with him. "We can't read the common universal language yet." "So you are telling me you can't read the common language, even though you were exposed to it for over 6 months? Felix rubbed his eyelids at the sick joke he was hearing. After all, if they couldn't even read the language, how were they supposed to watch the movie? Embarrassed, Olivia scratched her cheek with a finger, while looking at her toes. "We were busy with the family tradition revival projects and all the fun things that were happening in the UVR. She coughed, as she looked at her sisters, so we really did not put too much focus on learning the language, because all the TV streams were subtitled or dubbed." Sarah extended her finger and added to support Ollie, "Also, we did not think we would be able to enter the UVR this early. We believe there is still at least 2 years before we get our hands on an AP bracelet." The other cousins just kept nodding their heads to whatever they said. Felix gave them a bitter smile and explained why he was upset. "How are you supposed to watch the movie if you can't even understand what they are saying?" He sighed, "I can add dubbing, but that will reduce the immersion inside the movie. You may not understand now, but the moment you enter, you will realize the huge difference between listening to the actors' real voices and hearing AI toneless voice. UVR cinema is in a different league than our cinema." He spread his hands, "There is just no way to compare them." The girls weren't even a bit sad from what he just said. They honestly didn't care if the immersion was lowered or even removed, since this was their only opportunity to enter the UVR and have fun in it before they get theirs in the far future. "Don't worry. I promise you that I won't complain about movie quality. I am content with just the dubbed version." "Me as well. Get the L testvels on no/v/elben.c/om. I never expected to enter the UVR today. Let's just pick a random romance movie. I want to see how other humans' romantic culture is." "What are you talking about? We did not get this chance to waste it on a lackluster romance movie." The tall ginger girl highlighted 2 movies on the list and said, "It is much better if it was an action or fantasy movie, like those. So when we enter the movie, we will feel like we are inside a magical world." Yes, she is right. I want to watch a fantasy movie. I am sick of romance and drama. I believe sci-fi is going to be amazing here. Why don't we watch that? No fan. You always pie. Felix just watched them argue about the genre of the movie for over 5 minutes to no positive outcome. Each two wanted to watch a genre and neither one of them budged from her choice. Felix sighed and sat back on the couch, planning to continue reading the list. He didn't interject or gave them advice on which movie to watch, since if it was up to him, he would definitely recommend a historical movie about the human race. Ask anyone in the cinema about the best genre, and their first choice would be history. Their choice was quite understandable, as there were tons of good movies and series that were based on real-life events. The majority of those movies either earned trophies and awards or were nominated for them. The history of the human race was a mine full of gems to be dug by the producers. How good would it be if Human Uprising was already made? He sighed. I would have dragged those girls by their hairs to watch it. Sadly, it will be released 1 year from now. Suddenly an idea inserted itself in his mind, turning it into mush. What if I invest in those upcoming blockbuster movies that earned billions of SC? He then started to ponder on it deeply with a hint of elation in his eyes. He already had the information and details. The only thing he lacked was the capital to invest. But that wouldn't be too hard to get if he made his second bet. This was even better for Felix, as the viral games he remembered that happened in this year was only Wally's and the next one. But for others, he had absolutely no clue. Felix didn't have that much free time to spectate the games in his previous life, due to his early trashy bloodlines which forced him to focus only on integration to not get left behind. He only remembered Wally's game, and this one was due to their unique characteristics. This meant Felix had no choice but to find another method to earn coins, and investing in successful movies and series was actually the smartest move to make in his condition. It had only positive results. Besides earning a massive amount of coins, the process itself was clean and had a known origin. Felix knew that someday, his grandfather and the elders would find out that he was a multi-millionaire in the UVR. At that point, his excuse for betting couldn't be used against those shrewd fogies. However, if he had an investment company responsible for investing in his cheating knowledge, they would have nothing to say but beg for him to share a piece of the pie. Just as he was trying to recall the movies and series which were about to release soon, he felt someone waving his hand near his face. "What's up, Ollie?" he asked. "Felix, we came to a decision." She smiled and handed him the list that had a movie marked with a green light. "We picked the sci-fi movie Moving Stardust. It has romance, drama, action and comedy, everything that we wanted." Felix cringed the moment he heard the movie name. He removed that disgusting list from his face and asked them with a serious expression. "Are you sure about your choice? You can pick another, I don't mind waiting." All the ladies shook their heads in disagreement. "This is what we want, all other movies either lack something or has too much of it." "Are you 100% positive? I really advise you to reconsider." Felix decided to push one more time. If they still declined his goodwill, then he wouldn't bother himself anymore. After all, it was their funeral, not his. The ladies shared eye contact with doubt clearly on their faces. Nonetheless, they still stood their grounds and decided to go for it. In their minds, they simply wanted to begin ASAP, since there was a time limit to their stay in the UVR. It wouldn't feel good to get dragged in the middle of the movie, due to wasting time on picking the perfect one. "All right, as you wish." Felix gave a half shrug and said, "Wait for me here, I am going to buy us the tickets." He stood up and went to one of the tickets booths that had the least number of people queuing up. Before long his turn arrived and immediately requested, 11 tickets for Moving Stardust please." The counter employee's polite smile stiffened at that name getting mentioned in his presence. He moved closer to Felix and advised sincerely, "Brother, I think it is better to pick another one, so you won't pollute yourself and those flowers with you." Frustrated, Felix shook his head and replied, "It is not my choice, it's theirs." He semi-spread his arms, "I advised them not to pick it. But they were really stubborn about it. So I can only play along." The employee said nothing more and just handed him the tickets. He sighed in pity as he looked at those girls chatting about the content of the movie with expectation. "You should have at least watched the trailer. Rest in peace." His attention was brought back to Felix, as he heard him say, "Please add one blocking glasses and ear closing buds." He gave him the protection gear and wished him good luck on his battle. Felix returned to his cousins and gave them each a ticket, then informed them, "The movie won't start until 15 minutes. You are free to do as you please." He wore those buds on his ears and activated them. He then lay on the couch and closed his eyes, planning to take a quick nap over the duration. In his mind, the silence was 100 times better than their nonsense chatter. 15 minutes. Felix and the ladies stood all by themselves in front of a desolate-looking gate written above it, "Moving Stardust Entrance." When compared to other gates that had hundreds to thousands of people lining up to enter, theirs was truly a bit sad to look at. "The moment we open this door we will enter the movie world." He faced them with black glasses on and clarified, "At that point, you can interact with everything you see. Heck, you can even kiss the female lead or the male lead. But I advise you to not pull that bullshit in any cinema you visit if you don't want to get beat up." He pulled a small remote control from his pocket and put it in their line of sight. This is a control device that you can use to either zoom in, create a seat, fly, and all the other things you wish to do inside. He put it back in his pocket and explained that to get this device, they just had to call in their minds remote control and it shall materialize. The ladies did as he said, and suddenly each of them had a remote control in their hands. Felix retreated from the gate and extended his hand in a welcoming manner. "Who wants to do the honor and push the door?" His polite action got him labeled as a gentleman by his cousins. But honestly, he just didn't want anything to do with this movie, as he felt that even stepping into its world was a great sacrifice. Sarah pushed it open without waiting for her sisters to make a decision. She had no patience for another round of bickering. The moment the gate was wide open, they all got sucked in without leaving a single yelp behind. Immediately after their feet touched the ground of the movie world, a sudden beam of light projected on them, scaring those beauties out of their wits. Felix hushed them down and clarified that it was just trying to scan their tickets. After seeing that his cousins were not paying attention to him anymore, Felix sneaked behind their backs and ordered the AI of the remote control, create a seat at the corner of the world and activate the glasses and earbuds canceling feature. Finally, make an alarm when the movie ends. Felix instantly teleported away from his cousins, who were staring and touching everything in awe and fascination. Especially Sarah, who was playing on the grass like she never saw it before in her life. Her love for the UVR might even turn shit into gold in her eyes. Unfortunately for them, this world was their worst nightmare. They only realized so after the plot of the movie began. 30 minutes later. At the extreme left corner of the movie world, Felix sat on a comfy chair with a cup of his favorite orange juice. He forgot about his cousins, as his mind was currently busy contemplating his investment plan. He recognized that his massive library of movies and series was game-changing in the film industry. He knew which movies would make a splash in the UVR and which movies would turn to be a flop. However, the majority of those successful movies already had a giant production company behind their backs. This meant they would not let any foreign investor get a piece of their pie, especially Felix, who had absolutely no reputation within the industry. This left him with only a few movies that were not being favored at the start but turned into instant success later. In other words, hidden gems. He could totally shower them with his coins and expect massive returns later on. This method would bring him coins, networks, and some reputation as an investor without the stress of wondering if the movie would turn into a hit or a flop. After creating an outline for his plan, he decided to check on his cousin's mental health. Teleport me to my companions and remove the canceling feature. Few moments later, he arrived next to his cousins who were curled up like balls with tight-shut eyes and hands covering their ears. They kept crying out loud to make it stop. Yet, no savior had arrived at their rescue. Until now at least. I can't take this anymore. It's one thing to watch a cringy movie and another thing to live it. Please someone turn off the dubbing, I don't want to understand anymore. Felix expected as much, however, as soon as his eyes landed on Sarah, who was cheering with her fists in the air, he didn't know how to react anymore. His vision kept switching between her and the main character, who was a princess carrying 2 girls with one arm while fighting 10 bandits with another. Yet, Felix wasn't even bothered by this fucked up scenario, as he saw as much before. What annoyed him to death was the constant love dialogue between the three, like the MC wasn't in a death or life situation. If just a scene of the movie was like this, God knows how the rest was like. He kept going back and forth between them with a perplexed expression. He truly couldn't believe that Sarah was actually capable of watching this unique masterpiece with enjoyment. Heck, even the makers couldn't handle their creation and tried to burn its existence for their viewers' mental health. But somehow it got leaked out right before so, leaving this deadly predator roaming free in the UVR cinemas. Now you are telling me that my own cousin is loving this? I don't know if she just doesn't have a taste in movies, or her overwhelming curiosity towards the UVR is blocking all the negative stuff from her vision. Whatever it is, I will never hang out with her anymore. He covered his eyes, not wanting to see any more of this absurdity, and ordered the AI to kick everyone out except for Sarah. He hoped that the ending would wake her up. A few seconds later, Felix and his cousins were thrown outside of the gate. Irritated and somewhat amused, Felix chuckled at the sight of his cousins lying on the floor with a deadpan expression. He clapped his hands twice to bring their attention to him. Yet, the only thing that moved was their gray dead eyes, as they stared at him with a hint of blame and despise. Felix didn't take their looks seriously and just dragged them by their legs or hands in the direction of the lounge, since they were lying on the pathway, blocking others from accessing the gates. He kept going back and forth, and each time he dragged 2 with him. The spectators neither laughed nor mocked them, as they understood that the girls' reaction was thoroughly justifiable after knowing the name of the movie they came out from. They only nodded their head to pay respect for Felix's willing sacrifice and gave a look of condolence towards the fallen ladies. In the resting lounge, Felix was talking to Olivia, who recovered the quickest from the mental blow. "How did you find the worst movie in the history of mankind?" he asked with a chuckle. "You know I don't like saying bad stuff on other people's works." She frowned her eyebrows and said sternly, "No matter how horrible their creation is, in my eyes, they still put a lot of effort into making it. So don't expect me to answer you, since my only response will always be, not bad. As expected from your bubbly personality." He smiled gently and patted her head. "No wonder you were born with a plant element. One of the kindest and supportive elements in the universe." Olivia pouted and slapped his hand away from her head since he started to treat her like a child again. "Stop complimenting me, I won't take your side no matter what." She crossed her arms and humphed, "After all, you knowingly sent them off to get brain damaged, when you could have informed them about the movie details. How is this my fault? I clearly told them to pick another one, but they refused." He added out loud so the girls would hear him as well. "Moreover, Sarah said she didn't care about the quality of the movie, and all of you agreed with her before." He smiled innocently, "So I simply respected your choice." Olivia, who was never good at arguing, could only accept his excuse with a nod, while cursing him in her mind. Shameless Felix, you can just say you wanted to prank us like always. After seeing that she gave up on bickering, he changed the subject by informing his cousins to recover their mentality for the next hour until Sarah exit the movie. Absent-minded, they gave an inaudible tone as a response, while focusing on deleting any memory of that filth from their minds. 1 hour later, Sarah got kicked out of the movie as well. But, compared to others who felt their soul got devoured inside, she just skipped towards them with a happy expression. That movie was too good. How I wish I had Prince Charming saving me like that in real life. Her eyes sparkled with worship, as she folded her hands like a fangirl. The people around her who had an auto-translation program activated in their bracelet understood her, but couldn't process what she just said properly. Their bodies froze, as they kept checking the gate she came out of, trying their best to believe that it was just a fantasy. However, Sarah's scolding voice made them realize that she was not joking at all. Why did you guys leave the movie? Felix paid for the tickets, and it is really not polite to waste his money like this. The moment she finished speaking, the entire area descended into a deafening silence. Felix did not wait for others to break out of their daze, as he sneaked away from the area, to not associate himself with Sarah. He wanted nothing to do with the upcoming public humiliation. Miss, I believe the one who paid won't mind trading those few coins over the safety of your friend's mental health. Indeed, no one is abnormal as you, miss, to like that abomination. Stop trying to harm your friends, it is not cool. Leave. We don't want your kind near our children. The entire crowd instantly turned against her after knowing that she was part of that creepy fandom who loved to recommend those types of movies to naive people. Yet, Sarah just looked at them with a finger pressed on her lips and titled head. Her confused expression clearly showcased that she had zero clue what the hell they were saying. A bonus of not learning the common language. Felix did not wait for things to get ugly and ordered in his mind for the queen to laud them out. Felix was the first to wake up. Meanwhile, the ladies still had their eyes closed shut. Without delaying for even a second, he bolted outside of the room, barefoot and still in his pajamas. He knew that escape was a must if he wanted to avoid the upcoming headache of dealing with his cousins after this failed outing. Inside the cafeteria, Felix was eating his lunch while thinking of the movies he was planning to invest in. One of them was the upcoming Human Melodies. Your purchase has been successful. In 5 minutes a servant shall deliver the item to your room. After reading it, he turned off his laptop and put it to the side. He stood up and went to the toilet to take care of his bowls. 5 minutes later, a light knock resounded in the room. Felix bolted towards the door, opened it, took the box from the servant who was about to say something, and closed the door on his face while yelling his thanks. The servant could only scratch his cheek at this sight and leave. More deliveries were waiting for him anyway. Meanwhile, Felix sat on his bed while holding a small black box. He crossed his fingers and opened it up gently. A grin crept on his lips as took a small green pebble that had the size of a peanut outside of the box. Without further ado, he requested Asna to try and absorb the poisonous energy of the stone. Asna replied with a gloomy humph but still did as he asked and started absorbing the energy while yawning with a hand covering her mouth. The process didn't even take a part of a second before the stone shattered into small pieces. Delighted and elated, Felix's eyes couldn't help but brighten up at this sight. How is it? Did you succeed? And if you did, why don't I feel anything different? Did you absorb all the energy leaving nothing to me or what? Asna got annoyed by his barrage of inquiries and replied with a disdainful sneer. Stop asking stupid questions, you moron. Do you honestly think that I, Asna Origin of Laws, can't even absorb this trashy energy? She raised her voice, and how dare you insult me by providing me with this pathetic amount and saying that I took it all. It was not enough to even fill a single body pore. Felix laughed sheepishly as he realized that he acted a little bit too excited, since he also knew that the energy content of a low-grade stone was quite a trash to even humans, don't even mention Asna. Alright, this was merely to test if we could absorb energy without a beast bloodline, and not enhance my poison affinity. He smiled and dusted his hands from the small pieces of the stone. Oh, now that you mentioned poison affinity, I have some bad news to deliver. She covered her mouth to hide that wicked smile behind and explained, my previous estimate on the period needed for enhancement to reach a 100% affinity rating was quite off by a mile, since I used my own race elemental trashy resources to calculate, not your human race elemental stones. Explore Ta-T stories at no/l/bin.cm. Felix's heart sank to the depth of the abyss, as he knew that whatever was about to come was not going to please him at all. Now that I absorbed this shitty stone, I can claim with certainty that to reach 100% rating from 59%, it will take 10 years of absorbing this low-grade energy. Congratulations, sweetie, over this great news. Asna never knew that revenge could be served so fast. Felix's eyes almost rolled back in his head as he leaned on the wall for support. This can't be happening. 10 years to just finish 41%? Then how long it will take to finish other promised elements that I don't even possess? Asna rubbed more salt on his wounds mercilessly, 30 years or more. Felix clutched his heart in pain as he realized he would need to only use high-quality elemental stones and treasures. Things that were either too expensive or simply couldn't be bought by his trashy reputation. My beautiful future has just got bleaker. He cried out in despair with his knees on the ground while staring at the ceiling of his room. He truly began to regret even doing this experiment. They were not lying when they said that ignorance was a bless. The bottomless pit of his bloodline path was getting deeper and deeper, and if he didn't keep up with it, he would be buried sooner or later. Frustrated, Felix massaged his temples over the sudden headache that threw all his plans down the drain. He assumed before that if bought those low-grade stones with merit points, he could save up his coins as well as enhance his rating until it reached the peak, in about 6 months or so. But now everything went to smoke, as he needed a large number of coins if he wanted to obtain higher-grade stones. Although he had solid channels to buy at least medium and high-grade stones, they would still cost him a leg to obtain them in large numbers, since there was always a high demand for them. Especially uncommon elements such as poison. Now that he prepared a bloodline for his awakening, he shouldn't be bothered about it for a while. But elemental stones were a must-have resource for everyone due to its versatile effects and benefits it provided. Such as recovering lost energy after releasing abilities. Not to mention its uses as a basic material for creating most substances and potions. Of course, those potions and substances only utilized high-grade stones or above, as for mid and below those were used only by low-level bloodliners. This meant that the demand for those stones could never outweigh the supply, and for Felix to secure a stable channel of getting them at first hand, he needed authority and massive capital to support it. The only way to obtain at least one of those was for the investment plan to be carried out no matter what, and also put substantial emphasis on it. Otherwise, he would always keep slaving himself to secure coins for stones, and this was going to definitely delay his bloodline path immensely. A few minutes later, Felix stopped moping over the matter and went to pour himself a glass of water from the kitchen. After drinking the glass of water, he sprinkled some drops on his face and slapped his cheeks lightly. Come on, Felix, this is but a minor setback. Don't let it and that which affect your mentality. Refreshed, he wiped his face and asked Asna, if I brought you middle and high-grade stones, will you be able to calculate the duration needed to reach 100% rating? No matter what stone or treasure you bring, as long as they have elements, I can calculate everything about them, whether the duration or the amount needed. She smiled smugly. All right, let's get it over with now. I don't want any more surprises emerging. He lay on the bed and closed his eyes. Queen, log me in, please. 16 minutes later, inside a small-sized shop called Fuzziest Stones. Felix sat on a chair, holding a mug of coffee with one hand while talking to a handsome man with a pupilless whitish third eye in the middle of his forehead. "Sir Felix, it's not that I don't want to sell you, it's just that the amount you are asking for is way too low." The young man shook his head and explained, "Our shop does not make those kinds of deals. We only sell 100 medium stones or above, nothing less. Come on, I just want to take 1 medium and high stones home to sample them. If I liked your products, you can expect me to be a loyal customer." With a straight face, Felix asked shamelessly for 2 stones like a beggar. Discover NW Chapter SNN0EL buy.com. Speechless at Felix's repeated request, the young man facepalmed. "Sir, we are not selling wedding cakes here for you to sample. We sell stones that are made naturally under extreme conditions." He joked, "So how the hell are you going to sample them when everyone is selling the same type of stones?" Undiscouraged by his third refusal, Felix got up from his seat and put his arm around the young man's shoulder. He leaned closer and whispered in his ears, "Come on, brother JD, if you did me this favor, I will tell you where to find the shapeshifter penis." He smiled, "I know someone who is selling it currently. But I don't guarantee it will remain there forever, so you need to rush." Too bad, his attempt to entice JD backfired, as his hand that was on JD's shoulder was twisted in a different direction. Crack! The sound of bones snapping resonated in the small shop. Before Felix could even yelp at the sudden agony, he got lifted by his collar like a sandbag. "How the hell do you know that I have problems down there?" JD tightened his grip on Felix's collar and threatened, "No one knows this information. So you better speak, little bastard, before I torture you in my basement." Although Felix's legs and broken arm dangled in the air, his expression on the other hand was indifferent as ever. He simply eyed the livid JD and bullshitted his way through like always, "I didn't know that you had problems down there. I only told you this piece of information, since you are a man, and I know that no matter if a man is healthy or sick, they will desire the shapeshifter penis." A bit embarrassed, JD changed back to his polite businessman's expression, as he put Felix down and fixed his wrinkled collar for him. After he returned Felix to his original state, he rubbed his hands together and coughed, "Brother Felix, don't mind me just now, as I always get infected emotionally whenever something related to my manhood is mentioned." "No need to say more, brother JD. The less I know about your personal life, the better our business relationship will be." Felix returned to his seat and asked the Queen to heal his arm. It might cost him a quite sum, but it was worth it in his eyes. After all, the information he relied on to entice JD was going to get him not just his request but an extra worthwhile trade. That was his real target. He understood clearly that JD was desperate to treat his erectile dysfunction by any means possible, and the shapeshifter penis Felix saw before in Luby's shop was one of the best-known ways to bypass the condition entirely. He would be a fool to not take advantage of JD's scandal in his previous life to his advantage. "Now what I want to know is..." He took a sip from his coffee mug and smiled, "What are you willing to trade for this piece of information? I can accept your request while also adding a 10% discount to 1,000 medium and high stones you buy from my shop." JD didn't waste even a second before giving him the best offer possible to Felix. He could have negotiated for better, but he was in a rush to get the information from Felix. Simply because he spent decades trying to locate a potion, substance, medicine, or anything to treat his condition, but to no avail. He was left with only making a plea for the shops to contact him the moment one of those items appeared in their stock. "I hope you are satisfied with my price." Satisfied and content, Felix nodded with a smile. "It is enough, brother JD, and no need for a contract between this friendship deal. I will gladly make the first move and tell you that what you seek is at Luby Bloodline Shop." He gave a half shrug and added, "I have no idea how that bastard obtained it. But, I saw it there the last time I went to buy something. Joyful, JD laughed and extended his hand for a handshake. You truly deserve my friendship with your quick thinking. Since we are not doing contract, let's shake hands on it like gentlemen. Just what I prefer, brother JD. Felix shook his hand with a chuckle as well. JD transferred the serial number of the stones to Felix without hesitation and offered, I can take care of the shipping as well if you want. No need, I want to use the Wormhole Express. He explained, but before doing so I want to add as many items as possible, so I can deliver them all at the same time to lower the costs. Good thinking, brother Felix. He curled his lips in disgust and said, it is always better to ship as much as possible using those blood-sucking worms express. Indeed. Felix put the mug on the table and stood up, planning to leave. He had no reason to remain anymore and delay JD from running his errand. He clearly saw a hint of rush in JD's eyes, but he didn't say anything to not appear disrespectful. So Felix decided not to extend his welcome and bounce. Every favorable action could earn him extra brownies with JD. He knew that this man was one of the few individuals he had to hug their thighs if he wanted a stable platform to get his stones from. All right, I will see myself out. He bowed his head slightly and said, goodbye brother JD until we meet again. Goodbye, and my shop will always be open to you. JD said out loud while waving his hand towards Felix's retreating back. The moment Felix closed the door, JD's eyebrows instantly frowned as he tapped on his bracelet, trying to call on Luby. A few seconds later, Luby's voice resounded in the shop. To what do I owe the pleasure? Livid at hearing his nonchalant tone, JD smashed the table into two, like it was made out of moldy wood. Didn't I tell you to inform me the moment you obtain the shapeshifter penis? He roared out loud, almost causing internal bleeding in Luby's ears. So why the hell am I hearing about it from a stranger? He lowered his volume and threatened, explain yourself or you can forget about me recommending your shop to my VIP clients anymore. Sir. JD, it's not that I forgot to tell you, but that another VIP told me to reserve it for him. His voice cracked from fear of losing his VIP clients. He offered triple its price. So I can only sell it to him to not offend him. I don't give a shit if he paid triple, I can pay quadruple, and if you are still indecisive, you can create a small auction between us to bid for it fair and square. He comforted, I doubt that VIP will take it on you for it. All right, that works for me just fine. Luby replied eagerly over the large pie that just fell in his lap. He knew that by informing JD himself, he could have got the same result. However, he still didn't, as he had signed a contract with that VIP forbidding him from mentioning any details about the shapeshifter penis to anyone. But now that JD found out about it from another source unrelated to him, he was more than glad. Heck, he wished he knew the name of that stranger to give him a good kiss on the cheek. Good, now make it happen ASAP. And call me when you are done. He threatened him openly, I tolerate no games or tricks. So you better not bullshit me with that VIP. Otherwise, you would not like the outcome. Luby did not dare to make a fart after hearing his threat, since he understood that JD had ways to find his real address. You got it, sir. 3 days from now you will hear from me about the date of the auction. JD immediately hanged up after getting the confirmation he wanted. Afterward, he stared at the shop in trance in deep thought. Did he really not know about my secret, or he found out about it somehow and lied? Whatever it is, this problem of mine will be fixed once and for all. At that point, it won't matter if he lied or not since there will be no issue in the first place. He glanced at his crotch that was lying dormant and unexpectedly put his hands inside his pants. Soon the dragon shall awaken with multiple shapes and forms. He grinned, beware ladies for I am about to come. JD already began counting his eggs before the chicken even laid them. Hopefully, his dream wouldn't get shattered by the other VIP. After all, he might be just as desperate as him. In the family headquarters, at the gym, Felix was currently running on the treadmill, wearing tight sportswear and AirPods on his ears. His breath was steady and had only a few sweat drops on his forehead. Running next to him was Olivia, who had the same outfit on. The only difference was that her struggle to finish the run was clearly shown through her heavy breaths. Although a month already passed by, she still wasn't used to running 5 kilometers each day, plus doing other exercises at once. A few minutes later, Felix got off the treadmill and started to stretch on the ground, preparing to do 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 sit-ups. He felt that 50 for each exercise was just a waste of time for him, as it was not actually helping his body fitness improve at all. So, he doubled the amount on day 3 since the camp started to this point in time. Felix, how do you feel about the pain tolerance that's going to start tomorrow? Olivia stopped the treadmill and sat down next to Felix. Confused, Felix removed the AirPods and asked, "Did you say something, Ollie?" Olivia repeated what she said and added with a hint of fear in her eyes, "Also, do you think they will shock us with electricity to build our tolerance or just beat us with sticks as I saw in videos? What's going on that mind of yours to think like that?" He facepalmed and explained, "Did you forget about the UVR? They can simply use the party feature and take all of us inside. Then buy the awakening package from the Queen AI. What does it do? Are we going to practice awakening? Exactly like you said, but with more depth." He pointed at his back and Olivia understood what he meant. She laid her hands on it and began to push him down the floor, helping him stretch. After a couple of pushes, he thanked her and continued his explanation. To awaken in real life, there are only 2 paths. 1. Succeed and emerge as an awakened, or die in your own agony while slowly watching your flesh dissolve. However, in the case of awakening in the UVR, the pain degree can be controlled, and the process can be cancelled whenever things start to get ugly. So this is how it is going to be? Just like a mock exam. She crinkled her eyes and nose and said, "Now my cousins who can't even handle the pain from the practice won't dare to awaken for real, right, Felix?" Her happiness was understandable, as before 70% of her cousins were destined to die based on what Felix said, but now with this mock practice, she believed that no one would continue on treading this path, knowingly that awakening was impossible. After all, it was only common sense to not risk awakening for real when the mock practice wasn't passed successfully. However, Felix sneered at her naive thoughts. "Stop fooling yourself, Ollie. At this point, no one is going to back out no matter what happened. They will always think that they are the chosen ones destined to awaken. So they will go for it either officially or hidden, even if they couldn't handle 1% pain from the practice. Can't I just inform them that to have better chances, they will need more pain relief bottles?" She murmured with her shoulders sloshed. Felix replied calmly while doing his push-ups, "Be my guest, just don't get your hopes up, since whether you inform them or not, the maximum bottles they can have is still 2. That's only if they were lucky and bought them at the start. So nothing can be done then? I really don't want to see my sisters die." She chewed on her lips and stared at him with watery eyes. Annoyed by her whining, he stopped doing his push-ups and pointed a finger at her head. "Focus on yourself first. I doubt you will be able to awaken with even 20% duration." He scolded her, "So before putting death flags on others, remove the one on your head first." Olivia immediately held her tongue after realizing that Felix was right. Just because she only had a 20% duration, it didn't mean that the pain degree would be lowered. This meant that she was still standing on a thin line, as her pain tolerance was absolutely horrible. So, she stopped worrying about her sisters and focused on finishing the rest of the exercises. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Juniors and the upper echelon of the family all gathered on the 35th floor. Children, you did well the past month. Some excelled at the training, while some performed subpar. But what's important is that all of you took the training seriously and worked hard. So you deserve a round of applause from us elders and your parents. Clap, clap. Applause rained down on the embarrassed juniors immediately after Robert finished saying his piece. The juniors could only scratch their cheeks or avoid looking at their parents' proud expression. They honestly felt like the applause was a tad over the top, as the majority of them actually straight up didn't finish 50% of the exercises each day. In their eyes, the applause was exactly like being cheered on for obtaining a participation reward. Regardless, most of them still had a hint of pleasure at this shower of approval, as the moment Felix went to that island and revived his project, they were getting nothing but punishments and disappointed looks. So, participation reward or not, they would gladly take it with open arms. They were that desperate for a win. Abraham, why don't you take it from here? After the applause died down, Robert passed the hot potato of informing them of the next hellish training to Abraham, while sneaking behind the elders with a tired expression. Abraham, who was minding his own business, peacefully turned speechless after seeing Robert's shameless action. Fucking hell, we should have realized that drawing straws to be the informer was a bad decision when this old fart was playing with us. Irked, Abraham stood up with black lines on his forehead and trod towards the podium to cover for Robert. Reining the drawing straw agreement is really a classic move from brother Robert. I expected nothing less from such a business genius. Albert mused at Robert, who was being served coffee, with a polite smile. You have successfully passed the first fitness training task. But this was just the easiest one of all the upcoming tasks, so don't get too full of yourself and keep working diligently. He coughed and said at a faster pace. Now that's out of the way. It's time to start the next task, which is the awakening mock practice, or in other words, the pain tolerance training. To not waste time, we will start right away. He nodded his head at the elders to make a move first. The elders tapped on their bracelet, showing that sentence Felix showed to his cousins before, and stood in front of the 4 lines that were made by the juniors. This task will be carried out inside the UVR, and before you get excited, you should know that you are merely entering the white personal room of the user, not the UVR world itself. So don't get your hopes up. The light that shone in the eyes of the juniors was extinguished as fast as it appeared. Uncaring about their disappointment, Abraham began explaining how the party feature of the AP bracelet worked. His explanation was almost exactly as Felix's, quick and straight to the point. The juniors began doing exactly as he said, by memorizing the sentence and lying on the ground after. Begin the process. As soon as they heard Abraham's thunderous declaration, the elders started touching the juniors' foreheads. A couple of minutes later, the last junior closed his eyes and stopped moving just like the rest. Inside the white room of Elder Charlotte, Felix leaned on the wall and yawned in utter boredom at Charlotte's detailed illustration of how the awakening mock practice was going to be. It turned out that Abraham didn't explain the process, as he planned for the elders to do so inside their rooms. All right, I think everyone has some idea of how the integration process is going to be now. She clapped her hands to wake up Felix, who was dozing off, and asked, who wants to go first for a quick demonstration? However, the juniors acted deaf at her question, as each of them avoided eye contact with her. Felix chuckled softly at this sight, as it reminded him of the time he was acting in the classroom after the teacher asked a question. Meanwhile, Charlotte didn't find this sight funny at all, since the last thing she wanted was cowards on the group she was responsible over for the next month. Kids, the pain is going to be set at 5% of the real thing. So if you don't have the guts to practice the awakening, do us all a favor and just back off from now to save us resources and time, okay? Her taunt bore fruits, as the juniors, who were all hesitant to be the first to go, all started raising their hands and voices to be picked after being looked down upon like this. Pleased, Charlotte pointed at one randomly and informed him, prepare your mentality and relax your body. The moment I push the injection needle that is filled with 1% beast's bloodline in your heart, the process will begin. The junior couldn't help but sweat buckets from his body pores as his eyes landed on that long needle that was about to penetrate his heart. He wiped his sweaty palms with his sleeves and calmed his heartbeats a bit. Regardless of his fear, he understood clearly that he couldn't back down from this demonstration. After all, if he was terrified of even a needle, there was no need to bother continuing treading on this path, since those needles were going to be needed in each integration. So, he could only gulp a mouthful and nod at Charlotte to begin the process. Without further ado, Charlotte pushed the long needle deep in his heart and injected all of its content directly inside. The junior felt a momentary pain from the penetration, almost causing him to yelp out loud. But that was it. The bloodline that was injected in his heart did nothing but spread apart and travel through his bloodstream, reaching every nook and cranny of the body without harming him at all. Just like a peaceful guest coming to visit. Minutes slowly passed, and still, nothing happened. The juniors watched in bewilderment at their cousin, who had his eyebrows frowned in worry and confusion. Just as he wanted to open his mouth to ask the elder what was going on. An ear-piercing shriek escaped from his mouth, scaring the shit out of everyone near him. No one expected such a high-pitched scream to come out of a rough-looking young man like him. Speechless, Felix glanced at his cousin who was wailing with tears and snort in his face, while flaying his limbs around like a fish captured in a net. If this is how you act when dealing with only 5%, are you going to levitate in the air when you take 100%? He covered his eyes at this embarrassing sight, not wanting to see anymore. Get your Avrite ovals at no/v/e/lbn.com. If everyone is like him, then we will lose at least 80% of our juniors in the process. Meanwhile, Charlotte's eyes were emitting waves of despair at this sight. She was truly about to lose faith in those juniors if everyone's pain tolerance was the same as him. I hope others perform better. Otherwise, by the time they try to awaken for real, only dead bodies will welcome us. Hopeful, she switched her sight from the junior who passed out due to pain, marking the failure of the process, to the rest, who had horror clouding their faces. They knew that fainting meant instant death. So for their cousin to actually fail awakening from just 5% of the pain, they couldn't help but feel a sudden chill at the thought of awakening for real with 100%. It was only now that the true face of awakening was shown to them in all of its glory and obscurity that the World Council was hiding from them. Drag him to the side, and sit down. Charlotte didn't wait for them to break into chatter after that sight. She had no plans to alleviate their worry and fear, as their stay inside her room was limited to 4 hours, thus she had to make the best of it. We have no time to waste by going one by one. So you will all start at the same time. She saw that her order wasn't taken into consideration, as each junior had their eyes either fixed on their cousin who was twitching from time to time, or at their toes counting how many they have. Irritated, she frowned her eyebrows and decided to at least motivate them. Otherwise, their anxiety would affect their awakening process. We will start with 5% and 10 minutes, and if you fainted during it, it means you are out. She extended her hand widespread, showing 5 fingers and added, but if you managed to stay awake until the duration passed, you will be rewarded with 500 merits. Understood? Understood! They replied with a little bit of vigor. But their nervous expression did not change much. After all, no amount of merit could encourage them to look lightly at the integration process, following the horrifying scene they just regarded. Felix sat down first in a meditation position and waited for Charlotte to make a move. His cousins soon did the same, while looking at the long needles, hovering near their hearts. Gulping noises resounded in the room each time the piercing tips of those needles gleamed under the light. Suddenly, one of the females couldn't handle the view anymore and fainted with eyes rolled at the back of her head. Thud. The moment the body hit the ground, everyone stared at her speechlessly, not knowing why the hell was she here when she had trypanophobia. Helpless, Charlotte rubbed her eyelids and kicked her outside of the UVR. After all, she was not qualified to awaken if she couldn't even handle the image of a needle, nonetheless penetrating her heart with it. She would probably get a heart attack immediately if that happened. Discover W stories on no/e/lbin.com. Trypanophobia was not a condition to be taken lightly. Queen AI, carry on please. Charlotte requested politely for the Queen to handle the process. As expected from the Queen, her ways were always efficient and quick, as she didn't give anyone a chance to overthink before she penetrated their hearts. A few minutes later, a symphony of high-pitched shrieks marked the beginning of the awakening process. Meanwhile, Felix sat composedly with his eyes closed, without moving an inch or letting a single fart. In his eyes, this pain compared to the experiences and hardships he went through in his previous life was merely a joke. No one could understand the tortures he had to face in his path before becoming a third-stage bloodliner. So, he took like a champ. A clear contrast to the rest who were threshing and twitching around like fish on land. As always, the only reliable junior in the family is Felix. Charlotte smiled pleasantly at the sight of Felix sitting like a stone statue. She then glanced at the others, who either fainted on the floor with foam on their mouths or still wailing like pigs getting slaughtered. "This is going to be a long month," she sighed. 10 minutes quickly passed by. But, for those who still did not faint, it felt like 10 years. The moment the last second ticked by, the pain instantly vanished, leaving them feeling empty inside, like everything was merely a dream. All right, from the 9 of you, 3 has passed successfully, while the others failed miserably. Composed, Charlotte informed them of their results. However, only Felix was actually listening to her fully, as the others just kept staring at the ceiling absent-mindedly. Charlotte, unbothered by their lackluster response, kept on going. For those who passed, they can either choose to repeat the same practice with others who failed, or upgrade the pain percentage and duration. Can I upgrade my practice to reach half the power of the real awakening? Suddenly the cousins who were playing dead were shaken out of their daze forcefully by Felix's bold and insane request. They didn't dare to believe that he had actually asked to upgrade from 5% and 10 minutes to 50% and 15 minutes. Such a large upgrade was simply what a masochist would ask for. On the other hand, Charlotte's eyes gleamed with delight at his request. Her cold, unmoving lips couldn't help but widen a bit. Yet, what came out of her mouth was the total opposite of her creepy expression. "Are you sure, Felix? You should know that there is no need for a rush since you guys still have a whole month to get used to the process," she asked with good intentions. "Yes, Elder, I am positive." He suddenly paused and added with a long exhale, "I believe that even though the training plan you made for us is good, it will not be enough to handle the awakening 1 month later." He suggested with a polite smile, "In my humble opinion, it is much better if we used half the power to practice each day during those 25 days. And during the remaining 5 days, we try to awaken for real with 100%. This method was quite deadly, as many juniors wouldn't be able to handle the agony and keep constantly fainting until they either give up on awakening once for all or persevere until the real awakening day. At that point, those who stuck with the constant torture would have higher chances of succeeding for real, since the pain duration would actually get reduced by the potions. I hope you take my opinion into consideration, as this babysitting plan of yours is truly not going to achieve much, but provide us with fake hope that we can awaken." He gave a half shrug and added, "But in reality, we will just end up dying in our pool of blood." Felix knew that it was out of his character to go beyond his way and help others. However, Olivia's sorrowful expression on the treadmill popped out in his mind just before he wanted to stop speaking. In the end, he decided to give them that freebie due to her. If the elders considered his advice, they should have at least 40% of juniors succeed. Yet, the best part of his plan wasn't even that, but the fact that the rest who never had chances to awaken in the first place was going to be slapped by the reality that fate had other plans for them than to be part of the awakened race. At that point, giving up was certain, and the moment they do so, the elders were going to retrieve their bloodline's bottles, since they couldn't waste resources on commoners. Well, I have nothing much to lose if I saved the future lives of those morons. They might actually feel like they own me a favor. Felix mused in his mind after saying his piece. Charlotte's eyes were on the verge of spewing beams of light each time she heard his voice, like angels singing heavenly music in her ears. Felix recoiled a bit at the creepy way she kept looking at him. But soon his tense shoulders eased up as he heard her say, "What you said is exactly what I had on my mind, and I even shared this plan to the elders and parents." She scoffed, but the majority refused, as they believed that it was too much for them to handle at the very beginning. So I could only follow their decision and use this childish plan of upgrading the pain slowly. She sighed in dejection. However, that expression didn't even stick for 1 second before it got replaced by a devilish glint that sent cold shivers on everyone's back. "But now that you suggested it, and with me supporting it, they will have no choice but to follow our plan." She chuckled and said, "Otherwise their face will be slapped after they see you practicing with 50% while their children with 5%. Elder Charlotte, we are only thinking about their safety, nothing more. If not, we would have never mentioned it." Felix rubbed his hands and grinned as well. Charlotte laughed sadistically for the first time while staring at the juniors who were shivering on the floor in fear from the voices of this evil do. "Hee, dear Felix, the first share the same view as you. This is all for them. Too bad no one appreciates our goodwill." "Indeed." Both of them shared eye contact and licked their lips as they stared at those juniors, like sheep waiting for slaughter. 3 hours later. Back in reality, every junior woke up with a pool of sweat underneath them. They rubbed their bloodshot eyes and sighed in relief after finishing today's practice. It was truly a hell on earth. Meanwhile, in front of Charlotte, 8 juniors opened their gray dead eyes with numb expressions, like they just got out of a 3 hours torture. Sadly, that was exactly what happened inside Charlotte's room. After Felix gritted his teeth and took half the power of awakening without letting even a squeal, his cousins underestimated the pain greatly. After all, if Felix didn't even scream, the pain mustn't be that bad, right? Wrong. Their naive thoughts caused them to faint instantly the moment the process began. They didn't even last for 3 seconds before foam came out of their mouths like they were shocked by electricity. What's even worse was the fact that they had to wake up and start all over again. This continued for 3 hours straight until they returned from the UVR with this shape. If it wasn't for few breaks here and there inside the room, their brains might have short circuits. The elders and seniors began to notice the weirdness of Charlotte's group. Since the other groups were either sweating or in worse cases trembling. Meanwhile, Charlotte group appeared like a pack of zombies not responding to anything. Only Felix had a normal expression on his face as he conversed softly with Charlotte and laughing from time to time. "What's happened inside? Is the batch you took that bad to not even handle 5% pain for 10 minutes or what?" Abraham approached them with a confused expression. "Oh, not that." Charlotte shook her head and answered casually, "I just used the plan I proposed the last time, but got turned down by you softies, that's all." Abraham and the senior's expression instantly turned dark after hearing her reason. "What the hell, Elder Charlotte? You have no right to do that to my child. Even if you are an elder, you should still follow the rules of the family and abide by them. Otherwise, you will be removed from your position." A fuming mother pointed her shaky finger at her. Other parents all started shouting out loud in support of the mother's claim. Their fury was understandable, as every one of those 8 juniors kept looking at the ceiling or the ground absent-mindedly while chuckling like retards from time to time. Charlotte didn't bat an eyelid at their tantrum. She just crossed her arms above her chest and said in utter contempt, "First of all, I only followed my plan after Felix suggested the same thing to me as well." She smiled in his direction. He, like a true man, just gritted his teeth and didn't let a single yelp after taking 50% of awakening pain for over 15 minutes. She refocused on the parents and asked, "So tell me, if he can do that, why can't your wastrels do the same? Is he made of metal or his pain sensors are dead?" "No. It is simply because he can take hardship while they can't." She insulted their children in front of their faces, not caring about holding back. Felix neither blushed nor flushed, he simply kept blinking at Charlotte with expectation for more compliments. Charlotte chuckled at the sight of his shameless begging for flattery. But she had to disappoint him by continuing to address the parents' fury. "I will tell you right now that I will hold no responsibility after your kids die during the awakening, due to your soft approach inside the UVR, where they can't even die." She turned around, planning to return to her room. However, her calm voice kept ringing in the ears of everyone. "You can either break them during the awakening mock practice or give them false hope that awakening was achievable by your mild approach. It's up to you, not me." The parents weren't able to say anything, as she left them stranded in the middle of the argument like this. Actually, even if she stayed, they didn't have any solid counterargument to add on. Especially when Felix whipped out his phone and started playing in a game like he never entered the UVR with their children. In the end, they didn't want to embarrass themselves any further. So they just let it go and stopped mentioning this issue anymore. After all, it wasn't like their kids were dead or anything. Abraham decided to intervene at this point to change the subject, by asking Felix with a hint of disbelief in his tone, "Did she say the truth? You managed to handle 50% without issues?" "It was nothing much, to be honest." He lifted his head from the phone and smiled. "I believe that my cousins can handle it as well if they got exposed to that pain. Some of them might only need 3 times while some will need more. But in the end, I trust in their tolerance to help them pass through it successfully. You just need to give them a chance. Am I right, guys?" He spread his hands with a sincere smile as he looked at his cousins. In the eyes of the elders and seniors, he really resembled an uncle who had his cousins' well-being set as a priority. However, the juniors only saw the devil in that form, trying to drag them to hell with him. But they could do nothing about it and just get dragged with a smile on their faces. "He is right. We want to change the plan as well and start training the same way as he does. He is no better than us. If he could do it, we can achieve it as well. We just need a little bit more time than him, that's all." A short red-haired cousin trembled each time a boastful sentence came out of his stiff lips. In the end, he couldn't handle saying more and passed the ball to his cousins. "Right, guys?" The rest had no one to save them from this shithole that Felix threw them in. They understood that only by accepting his flattery would they save face for their parents. Thus, the poor lads could only support their cousin with fake bravado. "Indeed, 5% was nothing, I didn't even faint. Even though I passed out, I firmly believe that I will not faint next time during 50%. Honestly, I was planning to ask for a 50% upgrade as well. But I thought it was too high profile." Nonchalant, a young man said with his head lowered, too engrossed in cleaning his glasses with his t-shirt. "Fuck, why don't you say that while lifting your head, James? I dare you. Imagine fainting at 5%, yet daring to say such bullshit. You really love slapping your parents' faces, don't you, James? Enough insulting him, guys. He passed out over 30 times during the past 4 hours in my group. Sarah whirled her finger at her temple and said, "So I believe that really messed up his head. Damn, 30 times in 4 hours? He must have broken some world record with that. Meanwhile, I only fainted 15 times. At least you passed out 15 times." A cousin sighed in dejection. "I only fainted 4 times before managing to handle the pain. Me only 3 times. I believe if I had time, I could have reached 9. No. The elders and the parents all turned speechless after hearing them humble brag about the number of times they fainted. They expected them to live up to Felix's challenge and accept the same method he used. But why the hell did it turn into a competition between them over the amount of fainting? Have they finally realized that competing with Felix is meaningless and it's better to just contend with each other? I think they need another confidence boost. Worried about this messed up sight, Abraham pondered with narrowed eyes at the family's future leaders, laughing and flattering each other's fainting number like morons. Suddenly he saw them lifting the arrogant James and throwing him in the air while chanting his name out loud. "What the fuck, rascals?" He slapped the podium with his palm and scolded, "You still dare to celebrate after your trashy performance? You really are getting bolder by the day." Elder, someone made an online search and found out that James truly broke the world record of fainting in a short amount. Kenny, who stood silently throughout the entire farce, made his entrance with a polite smile. So they wanted to celebrate this achievement. Midair, James removed his glasses and lowered his head to clean them. "Elder, you told us that we need to find something unique that sets us apart from the rest." He smirked arrogantly. "Well, I found my talent in this life, and that is being the best at fainting worldwide. Heh, I can already see myself making tours around the world, showcasing everyone my gift. This is my path in my life, and I am glad I found it this early." The juniors couldn't help but put him on the floor and distance themselves from him after hearing his retarded dream. They truly began to believe that he had a screw loose after fainting that many times continuously. Unbothered by the dumbstruck and worried gazes everyone was giving him, James wore his glasses back on and left the floor with that confident smirk still planted on his face. He was truly not bullshitting them. Meanwhile, Felix had absolutely no idea what was happening around him. Since the moment he answered Abraham, he wore his AirPods and focused on playing his league match under the curses of his teammates for going AFK. Furious elders, embarrassed parents, humble bragging juniors, Felix playing on his phone, and finally James, who walked out of the floor arrogantly to pursue his dream. This gathering could not get any weirder. So the elders just excused everyone and ended the assembly early, on this uncanny note. Indifferent, Felix threw his broken phone in the garbage bin immediately after entering his room. The toxicity of League's community was truly one of the deadliest poisons in the universe. New chapters will be fully updated at novl/bin.com. Without further ado, he went to the bathroom first, planning to take a quick shower, so he could make a phone call to the Wormhole Express after. It turned out, the lady boss already contacted him earlier this morning to inform him about the shipment arrival in her shop. That meant he finally could use the serial codes of the pain relief potions without a problem. He was simply waiting for them so he could make one delivery that includes everything he bought in the UVR all at once. 10 minutes later, he sat on the couch, wearing only a bathroom robe on. He was obviously impatient to not even dress up first, before making the call. Fuck me, I don't remember their phone number. Annoyed, he asked for the all-knowing queen to give it to him. Suddenly, a long list of phone numbers was displayed before him, each for a different race. His eyebrows twitched, as he forgot to mention that he wanted the human branch one. Sorry, can I have the one for humans? As you wish, Sir Felix. The queen left only one number on the long list and even highlighted it with green light, so he wouldn't miss it. Felix smiled and thanked her. Although, Felix could simply just order her around and she would obey since she was merely a basic version of the real queen. He still felt that it was improper, as she was always nice to him, especially in his lowest during his previous life. So, he always treated her like a real person and only made requests, not orders. Ring ring ring, clack. Hello, this is Wormhole Express Human Branch. How can I help you? A warm, enthusiastic female voice resonated in the room. Hello, this is Felix Maxwell, from planet Earth that exists on the borders of the Alexander's kingdom. I called your company to ask for a few items I purchased in the UVR to be delivered. Felix gave a professional straight-to-point response. We are happy to do business with you, sir. I just need your AP bracelet ID number first to obtain your personal details. She paused and requested, Can I have your permission to do so? Of course, be my guest. A few moments later, she informed him, All right, we have your planet coordinates as well as your home address. Do you want us to deliver your items to your current address or you want to change it? Leave it be. I want my stuff to arrive here, he replied. Good, now that we got that out of the way, I need to ask if you have the serial codes of the purchased products, or they are still in the seller's hands. Without answering, Felix swiped his finger left on the hologram and sent all of his items' serial codes, from potions to stones. Pleased by his cooperation, her voice got a bit warmer. Finally, we need to discuss the delivery method and their prices. If you are not familiar with them, I can explain in detail each one benefits and their required payment. No need, I want to choose the basic 7 days delivery plan. Felix didn't bother hearing her explanation of those VIP methods that he couldn't afford even with his current capital. As you wish, sir. Based on the current number of items you provided us, the delivery price shall be 550.500 SC. Do you give me permission to deduct it from your bank account? She requested with a tone lacking in the previous warmness. It seemed that she wasn't pleased by his commoner choice. Go ahead. Composed, he gave her his permission. Yet, his hand that was clutching his chest in pain, said otherwise. Fucking blood-sucking vampires, asking for $500,000 to deliver 30 items or less. Peep. His bracelet vibrated slightly, entailing that the payment had been successfully transferred. It was a great pleasure dealing business with you, sir. I hope you have a nice day, goodbye. She instantly hanged up after getting the money, not waiting a single second to hear his response. Felix wasn't mad even a bit at her disrespectful way of treating him. He understood that every basic customer like him was treated like this by every company. Whether in the UVR or the universe. You only get shown respect when you slap them with your massive donger bank account. He stood up from the couch and went to order lunch. Yet his thoughts were on a completely different matter. His mind was trying its best to find a way that could help him avoid his family after he awakened 7 days later. He never planned to wait until the end of the month and do it with his cousins, as the faster he awakened the earlier he would reach greater purity in his integration and began his climbing journey on the SG individual ranking ladder. If he went and did so, he must hide thoroughly, since it was quite impolite to awaken without informing the elders and his grandfather after all the care they showed him. The way of hiding himself was what annoyed him the most. He simply couldn't disappear for 23 or 24 days straight. The elders weren't fools to not figure out that he was hiding from them. Fuck it, I will show my best form during those 7 days, and pretend that I was sick after. As long as I don't obtain a high-profile mutations, I should be safe. Felix stopped bothering too much about it and just decided to go with the cheesiest trick in the book. As his thoughts became clear, he remembered his freeloading tenet. Asna, where did you go again? I thought you had nothing to watch. So why didn't I hear anything from you the entire day? A few minutes later, no response came through. He repeatedly called, yet still nothing. This time he wasn't mad at her lackluster response, as he figured out pretty quick that she was probably asleep. His guess was right, as Asna was really sleeping peacefully on a mist-made bed, with dark eyes from mental exhaustion. It was only a natural result after she spent 6 months binge-watching movies and series without a pause. No matter if her body needed sleep or not, the consciousness always needed a break from time to time. Otherwise, she would turn insane. Sleep was truly a gift one should treasure dearly, as some people couldn't even enjoy such a basic human need. Eager and quite impatient, Felix roamed around the living room with his hands folded behind his back. He couldn't sit still for even a second, as his items were about to arrive in a couple of seconds. A week had already passed by in the blink of an eye. Felix already stopped going to the awakening mock practice after successfully enduring 100% for over 20 minutes continuously. His results showcased that he was absolutely ready to awaken for real. Thus, there was no point in torturing himself with the rest. Meanwhile, the same couldn't be said about his cousins, as they weren't able to even endure the basic 50% for 5 minutes before passing out. This constant daily torture forced 10 juniors to quit the training camp and return their bloodlines bottles to the family. The only one who performed only below Felix was Noah, as he managed to endure 50% for 20 minutes. However, the process wasn't smooth or pretty like Felix's. In fact, by the end of the duration, he flat out fainted for 12 hours straight. The sight scared the elders out of their wits, as they believed that his brain must have been damaged in some way or form. Thankfully, his cold personality was still the same after he woke up. However, the situation he caused managed to raise some warning flags on the elders' heads. They realized that it was a bit too much for the juniors to get tortured like that every single day without a break. So, they changed the schedule from 7 days of practice to only 4 days. What's going on? Am I really unlucky to get an amateur vampire, or something happened during the delivery? Irritated and somewhat confused, Felix scratched his cheek and glanced again at his bracelet. It turned out, his delivery was delayed by a whopping 2 hours, which was honestly unacceptable behavior. Felix didn't pay $500,000 to be treated like this. It was one thing to get hanged up on his face by their customer service, but another to have his delivery messed up like this. You asked for this. Finally, he wasn't able to handle it anymore and decided to rant on their customer service about this shitty way of treating their customers. However, just as he tried to dial their phone number, his finger froze in its place. Took you long enough. Felix's eyes brightened up at the sight of wind rushing from the windows furiously towards the center of his living room. Yet, the weird part was that not a single object or furniture got displaced. It was like the space in the room froze everything inside, even Felix's body. A few seconds later, a small crack emerged midair in the exact spot where the wind was rushing before. Bewildered and speechless, Felix sized up the small crack that was forcefully getting stretched by a fat blue-scaled worm that kept wriggling its body to enter the room, but to no avail. After a few more attempts, it gave up and just remained stuck in the spatial crack with half of its body dangled, almost touching the ground. Hello, is anyone there? The space receptors of the blue worm kept flickering around, trying to sense any life form presence. Suddenly, it paused its actions after noticing Felix sitting on the couch. Cough, I could use some help, sir. It lifted one receptor and pointed at Felix. I doubt that you want to sleep while looking at a fat worm stuck in your room. Don't you, kind sir? Although its way of asking was polite, Felix was still as unresponsive as ever. He simply kept staring at this human-sized worm with a deadpan expression. Should I take a video of this humiliating failed delivery and blackmail the company? Felix was beyond livid after seeing the unprofessional farce in front of him. He truly felt like he was cheated out of $500,000. However, his rationality retook control and shook his head to remove that stupid idea from his mind. No thank you, I still want my life. It was never a good option to offend the delivery companies that had his own private information, as they could easily know his hidden persona in the UVR, based on the items he bought. Even though they were heavily restricted by the SGA laws to not spread his information online, they could always find a way to mistakenly give it to others. Hell, even on Earth, massive companies were selling data of their users to each other on a daily basis. Don't even mention those greedy delivery companies. This was the reason he chose the Wormhole Express company in the first place, as he knew that it was one of the best delivery companies in the universe that took pride in three things: fast delivery, secure information, and professional service. But if he blackmailed them, he would have left them with no choice but to drop all pretense and annihilate him. Hello! I know you can hear me. I am talking straight in your mind. The fatty worm kept yapping constantly in his mind, not letting him a single moment to think. Although I can't blackmail the company. This annoying fatty is another matter. Felix licked his lips and approached the spatial crack, unworried about being affected by it. After all, the space worm race had complete control over the element of space. Thus, as long as the fatty was near him, the crack couldn't devour him and his room. Stop drooling on my carpet, fatty, lest I put a lamp close to your skin. He threatened the blue worm immediately after seeing his acidic drool ruining the carpet. Fatty, who was about to open his mouth to thank Felix, shivered at his threat and closed its tiny mouth shut. Satisfied by his submissiveness, he patted his head like a pet. Before Fatty could sound his displeasure at this downgrading treatment, Felix grabbed his receptors and brought it close to his face. Now, you little shit. I am extremely pissed that the company sent an amateur like you, instead of a professional. He extended 3 fingers near his receptors and admonished him. First, you were late by 2 hours. Second, you got stuck inside your own spatial hole, like a moron, and finally, you begged your customer for assistance. You literally broke 2 of your company's main pillars on one delivery. The fatty couldn't even argue back, as everything Felix said was correct. He knew that he messed up this delivery pretty badly. So, he kept his silence obediently, not daring to anger him any further. In his mind, he just needed to listen to Felix's rant for a while and everything should be back on track. Unfortunately, Felix's rant was merely the beginning of his nightmare. If it was another customer, they won't hesitate to report your performance to your supervisor. But luckily, you met me. Felix let go of his receptors and smiled, an easygoing person who let bygones be bygones. But you are still required to give some compensation over the damages you caused me. The fatty wasn't an idiot to not realize that his fate was in the hands of Felix's. But, to get blackmailed like this, still left a sour taste in his mouth. What do you mean I caused you damages? He scoffed and said, besides some burnt marks in your carpet. I broke nothing else. So I can gladly pay its damage if you willed me to. How about 600 SC for a new carpet? Quite a generous price, don't you think? He offered with a hint of mockery in his tone. Unbothered by his hidden insults, Felix brought a chair near the crack and sat on it, backward. Read latest chapters at n/velbi.co/m. Who said anything about physical damages? What I meant is the harm you caused to my mental health. His shoulders slumped down as he continued lying through his teeth. You had no idea that I planned to awaken today. I was just waiting for my items to arrive to start the process. But now after this farce, and especially seeing your ugly face stuck in my room like this, how am I supposed to awaken? You ruined my mental preparation for awakening that took me years of effort to build. But now I don't know when I am going to build it again or how long it will take, and this is all because of you, little shit. He pointed his finger at him and asked, "So tell me, how are you going to compensate me?" The fatty worm realized that he had no way out from this shithole but to pay a heavy bribe to shush Felix. Otherwise, his job as a delivery worm was over. He would rather pay him than lose his job. As in his race culture, being a lazy unemployed worm meant only one thing, that was getting isolated by everyone until he commits a star suicide. So, he could only sigh at his dogshit luck and inform Felix of his bribe. "I will give you my spatial holding chip. It's the only valuable thing I have in my possession. Just get me out of here. My skin is getting rough from this long sunlight exposure." He shuddered and said, "My wife will beat me up if she saw it." Amused, Felix chuckled slightly at the fatty worm, who was trying desperately to hide from the sunlight. Those space worms weren't being nicknamed as wormpires for no reason. In fact, if it wasn't for the many similarities between them and the vampire race, no one would have mentioned it in the first place. However, Felix still didn't give him a hand. He just grinned wickedly and watched him squirm around in anguish. The bastard truly deserved it, as he tried to fool him by saying that the spatial card was the only valuable thing in his possession. Maybe, if others who lacked knowledge would dance in joy after getting the card. But to Felix, it meant nothing, since he could simply buy it from the UVR. What he truly wanted from the worm was actually him. "I will take the card in compensation for the physical damages you caused to my carpet that was gifted by my late parents. The only gift they left me after passing away. God bless their souls." Felix kissed 2 fingers and pointed them in the air with a mournful expression. He truly had zero shame to use his dead parents as a source of blackmail. But honestly, with his parents' personality, they pretty much would have expected nothing less from him. "Stop being so shameless. Who would believe that this trashy carpet is a gift by someone?" The fatty finally couldn't handle it and snapped at him. "I refuse to accept such blatant blackmail. Take it back and apologize to my parents. Otherwise, forget about reporting you to the company. I will report you to your own worm tribe for humiliating my family like this." Felix crossed his arms over his chest and added with a bone-chilling tone, "I have everything recorded." Frightened and quite spooked, the fatty's receptors immediately withdrew inside his scales after realizing that Felix even knew how to report to his tribe. If Felix did as he said, the fatty losing his job would be the least of his concerns, as he would get disowned by his parents and exiled from the tribe. Since family was a sacred and glorified based on their tribal worm race culture, it should never be dishonored by anyone. Otherwise, exile awaits the offender. Who the fuck is he? I thought this planet should be filled with uneducated country bumpkins. So why the hell does he knows my race traditions? His mind was in an utter mess, not able to comprehend who the fuck he was dealing with. "So are you going to agree to my physical compensation or not?" Felix knocked on his head, to force his receptors out. A few moments later, the fatty nodded silently, not wanting to speak anymore. God knows if that prick was going to put him in another trap by twisting his words. Satisfied, Felix patted his head again. "Good boy, now moving on to my mental damages that your reckless actions caused." He smiled warmly and said, "I simply demand an easygoing request that you can fulfill without losing anything." The fatty flinched at his warm tone, as he expected from this demon nothing less but to get ripped off heavily. Alas, Felix's request turned even worse than what he expected. "I want to obtain your lifelong free delivery contract." Felix's grin widened, as he laid out an ultimatum that shattered Fatty's wishes of Felix going easy on him. "Give me a fucking way out, you heartless devil." He broke out of his silence with a deafening roar. "How dare you ask for my contract that can be used for my protection? Stop acting as I abused you. My request is quite fair if you think about it." Felix cleared his ear nonchalant and clarified, "Since if I reported you to your supervisor you will definitely lose your job. Hence, the contract that you are protecting now will be taken as well. So in my opinion you only have one option, and that is to accept my deal and keep your job. At least your wife won't starve," he suggested, smiling. If Fatty had eyes, he would have already started sobbing over being exploited in this inhuman manner. He was just a simple, honest working worm. What did he do to deserve this heartless treatment? Too bad, no one was here to rescue him from Felix's clutches, thus the only thing he could do was curse to vent some of his aggrievedness. "You are the real wormpire. You blood-sucking monster. I curse you to die at your awakening. I will never deal with your race anymore." Felix's thick skin blocked all of his curses easily. "You can curse me for eternity, I don't give a crap." He stood up from his chair and extended his palm under the worm mouth. "The only thing you need to do now is to stop wasting my time and give me the contract to sign." Fatty mumbled a few extra curses under his breath, then opened his mouth unwillingly, showing a set of razor-sharp teeth and a black hole that kept whirling in his throat continuously. Without warning, he spat an AP bracelet with some drops of acidic saliva on it. Felix swiftly retracted his palm, dodging those drops reflexively. Smack! Livid at this messed up the attempt to harm him, Felix smacked the Fatty right in his shiny head. He knew that Fatty did it on purpose, as an act of revenge. After all, the black hole in his throat led to a clean oversized dimension inside his body, where all of his shipments were being stocked. There was absolutely no way for the items inside to get tainted in any way or form. Otherwise, the worm race wouldn't have become the best in this delivery industry. "You little prick, you better ask the Queen to show me the contract ASAP." Felix cleaned Fatty's AP bracelet from those drops and put it on the chair. Then unexpectedly, he went to pull the curtains of every window in his room. "Close them off, you demon. My skin is cracking." Fatty wailed in anguish after getting exposed to a heavy dose of sunlight. He wasn't lying though, as his smooth moist scales were showing signs of getting dry up. "Contract." Felix merely crossed his arms next to the window and observed him getting tortured like this. His personality might appear shameless and playful in front of his close relatives and friends. But deep inside, he was as psycho as Asna. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to blow his soul up before. Something only insane individuals would attempt to do. "Queen, please present him my lifelong free delivery contract to sign." Unwilling, Fatty cried out loud. "Sir Bodadai, I can clearly see that you are being blackmailed. Should I activate the protection protocol and inform your emergency contact?" Queen AI suggested with good intentions. Vist and Velben, CM for new updates. However, Bodadai refused the protocol and rushed her. "No, just do as I say fast. If a word gets out of what happened here, my life is going to be over. So just go ahead and give him the damned contract to sign." "As you wish, Sir Bodadai." Suddenly an aqua holographic contract hovered above the chair. Felix smiled and closed off the window's curtains. "That wasn't so bad, right?" he smiled warmly, as he approached the sulky worm. "Choke on my spit." Unperturbed, Felix ignored him and focused on the conditions and terms of the contract, reading them with his eyes. A few moments later, he grinned gleefully, as he spotted the two conditions he heard about in his previous life. // term 4.5, the delivery must reach within a minimum period of 3 days, and always takes priority. Term 6.3, all items delivered will be free of charge, no matter the weight or the amount. This condition doesn't include paying for empire-wide/universal-wide customs taxes, // No wonder he fought tooth and nail to force the Fatty to give him this contract. Just those two terms alone were enough to make his life much easier, don't even mention the rest of the terms. Delighted, his grin kept getting wider and wider as he continued to scroll down the page. Suddenly, his grin stiffened after he noticed a condition he never heard about before. The signatory must provide absolute safety to the contract provider from Hunter's aggression. Failing to abide by this term will result in paying a fine of 20 billion SC. His loud voice kept getting softer and softer each time he read a word. By the time he reached the whopping 20 billion fine, his voice resembled a mosquito buzzing sound. Silence abruptly engulfed the room as Felix was lost for words at the mere sight of such a dastardly condition. Only now did he realize that his information on the lifelong contract was utter garbage. He couldn't believe that he actually wasted coins to buy false intel like this. In his previous life, he was interested in getting contracted by a delivery worm after becoming a third-stage bloodliner. So he wouldn't bother about paying constantly the heavy shipment prices. However, the intel about the conditions of the contract was heavily protected by the wormhole company. Thus, Felix had to buy it in the UVR from intel gatherers. However, the F***er who sold it to him explicitly said that the only downside about the contract was the need for Party B to help Party A to get more clients for their delivery job. Felix at that point easily believed in him, since he knew that the Wormhole Express company rewarded resources to their junior delivery worms based on the number of deliveries achieved in a year. It was common knowledge in the UVR. But in reality, he actually needed to provide 24/7 security for Bodadai, protecting him at all costs. That was clearly an impossible task for him. Hell, Felix wasn't confident that he could protect himself, don't even mention others. What's the meaning of this 20 billion SC? Felix frowned his eyebrows and said, I don't think your life is worth even a couple of millions. This is what you get from asking something you can't afford, you poor pepper. Bodadai didn't hold back in his belittling at all, as he added, I never seen before a thick-skinned commoner like you who lusts over free delivers from my race. Something we only do to strong and rich individuals who could afford to protect us from hunters. I see. Felix nodded his head a few times in understanding, totally ignoring Bodadai's belittling. He quickly figured out the real reason why those contracts even existed in the first place, based on Bodadai's words and the public knowledge he had. The worm race was one of the best, if not the best, space elemental controllers in the universe. They could create wormholes, freeze space, create dimensions, and even had a hand on creating the spatial card. However, their strength was abysmal compared to other races. Heck, even humans' bloodliners could flatten them easily if they managed to capture them. That created a race that had amazing utility abilities but trashy combat prowess. This meant they were juicy targets to hunters from all different races. Whether to be enslaved in secret and be used to privately open up wormholes or just harvest their body parts for potions and substance creations. What was messed up about this was the fact that hunters never targeted space worm seniors, as they knew that it was near impossible to capture them or even approach them. Their space element control was no joke. However, the same couldn't be said about the juniors like Fatty Bodadai. They were still learning how to harness the space element. If it wasn't for so, Bodadai wouldn't have been stuck in his own spatial crack like a retard. The hunters took advantage of their lackluster control and targeted only them, striking exactly during the delivery work hours. As they knew that amateurs like them always left hefty trails behind after opening a wormhole. They took advantage of those trails and laid ambushes on one side of the wormhole bridge, waiting patiently for their prey to arrive at their destination or return from it. Their operation didn't have even a 5% success rate, but it was enough to kidnap or kill an amount that managed to raise warning flags on the Spaceworm seniors' heads, leaving them no choice but to implement this lifelong protection contract that offered free shipments for eternity, as long as the signatory protected the safety of their junior. The moment its implementation was announced, every individual who had absolute confidence in his reputation and strength rushed to sign it as fast as possible. After all, to have a dedicated delivery worm that served no one but them in the universe was truly a birthday wish being fulfilled. Just like that, the hunting was lowered to the bare minimum. Which was quite understandable, as the majority of those hunters were simply commoners looking for instant richness. However, if it meant offending an individual that had authority over their life and death, the hunt wasn't worth it anymore. On the other hand, there was Felix, a weakling who had neither strength nor reputation to scare off the hunters. Thus, he knew that unless he found a way to salvage the situation, he could forget about obtaining the benefits of the contract. Can we modify the contract as we please? He lifted Bodadai's bracelet in his hand and brought the hologram close to his face, trying to find any loopholes to take advantage of. Fatty sneered at his attempts and answered, "Yes, we can, but no matter what you say, I will not lower the price tag." He laughed wickedly, sounding like two sharp razors grinding on each other. "Hell, I hope you sign it. So I can commit star suicide on your son. Just so you can drown in debt." An unpleasant memory instantly resurfaced in Felix's mind after hearing the star suicide term. He was traveling with his clanmates to an undiscovered galaxy for exploration, based on newly bought news from the UVR. But unbeknownst to them, the wormhole that was supposed to take them to the new galaxy ended up being a star suicide wormhole that was opened by a moron worm who was sick of his life. While humans kicked the buckets by themselves, the space worm race opened up a path directly to a star, to burn themselves into crisp. A truly glorifying and dramatic way to die. In a normal situation, there should be no problem with this. But sadly, the wormhole they opened would stay active until it either gets turned off by the owner, or the energy that sustains it run off. This reckless, selfish behavior by them caused multiple tragedies of galaxy explorers getting turned into ash after entering one of those wormholes, thinking that it was their path to treasures and new resources. Unfortunately, Felix's crew fell into the same trap. He could never forget the brightness and the hellish heat of the star that welcomed them with open arms at the other side of the wormhole. A surprise that could make the toughest man on the universe piss his pants in fright. If it wasn't for their spaceship's high-grade alloy and Captain Inhuman reflexes by activating all of the ship's thrusters to travel away at the speed of light, they would have been roasted alive. Furious at this bastard who reminded him of that traumatic experience, Felix started beating him ruthlessly. "Who are you trying to threaten, you retard? You couldn't even open a hole that fits you to do your job properly. Don't even mention opening one that can harm others." Unexpectedly, Bodadai took Felix's punches with his hard scales like a champ, not even feeling a slight itch. "Yes, that's it, to the side, please. That's the spot, keep adding more pressure please, and use your legs if you need to." Felix never once felt more urge to rush awakening and gain some strength, just to beat this fatty to plump. "Listen up, you little shit. My patient has run out." Felix tapped on his bracelet and showed Bodadai his company's customer service number. "I will modify the contract from lifelong free deliverers to only 20. But in turn, the protection bullshit must be removed. If you don't agree, I will straightway complain to your company. At least they will refund me my coins over your shitty delivery." Bodadai knew that Felix was not messing around anymore. So he tried his best to negotiate for a bit of leeway. 20 times is too much. He shook his head and offered, "Make it 10 and you have a deal." Aggressive, Felix pressed dial on the number and said, "I hate wasting time on negotiations. So make it 17 times and that's it. Don't even think of lowering it again. F***CK. Fine, hang up already." Felix truly gave him no option to further his negotiation after seeing that bracelet ringing. "Queen, modify the contract please to those terms." He sighed reluctantly. Queen did as requested efficiently. A few seconds later the contract terms changed and Felix immediately used his UVR ID number to sign after checking that everything was loophole-free. After doing so, his aggressiveness and bully personality withdrew back, allowing his playful personality to grace the stage. "Io, brother Fatty, you look uncomfortable in this position. Let me help you out." He smiled warmly and grabbed Bodadai from his space receptors, trying to drag him inside. However, just as he pulled, Fatty wailed out loud in pain. "Fuck, stop it! I don't want to enter your demon lair anymore. Just take your items and push me outside the crack." He swiftly opened his mouth and spewed out a small chip that resembled an Earthling's phone memory card. Felix let go of his receptors and picked it up. Without delay he installed it on a small entrance in his AP bracelet, then he displayed a hologram before him that showcased the icons of all of his purchased items. Relieved that not a single item was missing, he closed off the hologram and grinned cheerfully. "Glad to do business with you, brother Fatty. I will call you the next time I need your talents." He patted Bodadai's oversized belly and suggested sincerely, "I advise you to cut some weight, or else you won't remain long in the company." "Fuck you. I am not your brother, you devil. Just push me away. I don't want to see your face ever again." He cursed him while wigging backward trying to exit himself. Unfortunately, nothing much changed, as his body didn't budge even an inch. Felix stared at this miserable sight and decided to give him a hand. So, he pushed him with all of his strength. Yet, his attempts turned out to be futile, as the fatty's weight was at least 8 times Felix's. "Can't you just close the bridge and cut yourself in half?" He tilted his head slightly and said, "I believe you can easily recover your other half without an issue." As a worm-based being, Bodadai still enjoyed some basic evolutionary benefits, and one of them was the worm's uncanny rejuvenation speed. Even on Earth, worms could recover their bodies after being split in half. Don't even mention the elite space worm race. "You bastard, if I wanted to do so, I would have done it without needing you to tell me." Bodadai snapped, as he waved his receptors around. "But I would rather get blackmailed by you than feel that pain again," he said, shivering. He was clearly remembering an unpleasant memory. "As you wish, let me get some help first." Felix shrugged his shoulders and explained, "I don't think I will be able to push you all by myself. Turn off the lights before you go." "Too bad." Felix hastily closed the door, leaving him all by himself dangled in the middle of the room like that. Felix headed straight to Noah's door, planning to ask for help since he was the only one who could help him without too many questions asked. He knocked 2 times on his door and waited patiently. A few seconds later Noah opened the door and eyed Felix expressionlessly. Felix took the cue and explained why he came. "I need a favor to ask. Can you come to my room? I will give you extra pain relief potion if you agreed." Noah thought about it for a while, then nodded slightly. He had nothing to lose anyway. 5 minutes later, both of them were pushing Bodadai's body outside of the crack again. This was already their 6th time, and each time they did so, he budged slightly backward. Their arms were already turning sour. Fortunately, this time their efforts were successfully rewarded by the joyful voice of Bodadai's on the other side of the bridge. "So long, losers." Felix and Noah did not take it to heart, as one of them was happy that this farce finally ended, and the other didn't care about anything besides his little sister. "Thank you, brother Noah. Here is your reward." Felix tapped on the relief potion icon on his hologram and immediately the bottle materialized in his hand under an aqua blue shimmer. He then handed it to Noah, who watched the process with a hint of surprise in his eyes. But that was it, he neither asked nor stayed. He simply took it, nodded his head in appreciation, and excused himself from the room without asking about the entire weird situation of the fatty worm. "Good luck on awakening, and if you needed anything just call me." Felix smiled after seeing him closing the door softly. Noah was indeed the perfect handyman for those issues. No questions, or bullshit, just straight out does what he was asked, and leave after being paid. If it was Olivia, she would probably have scolded Felix for blackmailing Bodadai. Felix removed all of those useless thoughts from his mind and glanced at the epic tier 4 bloodline icon with a glimmer in his eyes. It is time to awaken. He smirked and walked to his bedroom. Felix stood next to his bed with a hologram in front of him, showcasing the details of the spatial card that he just blackmailed from Fatty. / model name, XL 9th generation. Model number, MG4P2LL/A. Serial code, F17PQQL2G5MD. Device compatibility, AP bracelet 4th generation and above. Doesn't support devices below. Capacity, 30 square meters, //. Satisfied, Felix nodded his head after reading the capacity of the spatial card. 30 square meters was the same size as an average motel room. He knew that he earned a bargain, since to buy just a few square meters, the price wouldn't shy from a couple of millions. The spatial cards were not sold for the commoners who didn't have even a couple of thousands in their bank account, but for the bloodliners, rich people, celebrities, and authority figures. So, for Fatty to actually possess one of it, it simply meant that it was given to him by his company to hold small items like Felix's. Since his dimensional space was used mainly for oversized shipments, such as containers, machines, and even corpses of dead beasts. Hell, some professional delivery worms could actually deliver a whole spaceship inside their bodies. I wish you good luck dealing with the aftermath of losing it, brother Fatty. He chuckled at Fatty's upcoming misfortune and clicked the withdrawal button on all of his items. He pointed his bracelet at his bed and a sudden blue light projected from it, flowing like ripples of water. As the light touched the bed, 20 items or more started to slowly materialize on it. Felix stared at this captivating scene with a hint of praise in his eyes. No matter how many times he saw it, his respect for the metal race never diminished. It wasn't just him who felt that way, but actually every user of this convenient tool that enabled them to hold as many items as their card allowed them to. Felix could only bow his head in respect for the metal race's never-ending lust for the truth of the universe that pushed them to continue researching anything that had value. If it wasn't for so, they wouldn't have bothered to combine their technology with the space worm abilities to create such a sophisticated device. Heck, even the AP bracelet was created by them. The entire universe technology was being carried single-handedly on their shoulders. If they advanced forward, the rest advanced with them. If they stopped their groundbreaking inventions, the universe would halt as well. After a few seconds, the process had ended, and all of Felix's items were laid neatly on the bed. Asna, wake up. It is time to awaken. Just 5 more minutes. Asna murmured softly while hugging her pillow. I can't wait a single second more. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Felix started to annoy her to ruin her sleep. He already waited more than enough. It was time to awaken, and he won't tolerate any further delays. Fine, I am up, just shut up already. Irritated, she threw her pillow away, as couldn't continue sleeping under his annoying voice. So, she woke up with bloodshot eyes. Clearly, the time she slept wasn't enough to cover for her mental exhaustion. Good, you have 5 minutes to prepare yourself. Eager, he removed his t-shirt, exposing his well-built upper body, and picked only the items which were needed for awakening. The 4 pain relief potions, the tier 4 bloodline, rejuvenation potion, and lastly the double percentage potion. He then arranged them on the floor next to where he planned to awaken. After doing so, he went to his closet and took an oversized injection needle that he purchased yesterday from the street pharmacy. Hopefully it's not faulty. He opened its package and tested it by drawing his own blood to check if it was working properly. After all, the last thing he needed was penetrating his heart with it, but failing to inject the bloodline inside. Following the successful test, Felix placed the injection needle inside the bloodline bottle and extracted a whopping 20% of its content all at once. The bottle was marked with accurate measurements. On one side there was a metric system that displayed measurement down to the milliliter. Meanwhile, the other side showcased the percentage numbers. All of this just to help the bloodliners from not screwing up their awakening or integration after so. This amount should be enough. Although 20% was quite a large amount to awaken with, Felix wasn't worried at all, since he bought the double percentage potion just for this reason. If he drank it after injecting the 20% in his heart, the potion would do its wonders and half the upcoming pain waves from 20 to merely 10. Felix was confident that he could handle 10 waves of pain for merely 6 minutes after drinking the 4 pain relief potions. This strategy of his was used by the majority of bloodliners to secure for themselves the first passive ability, and also bring them closer to the lesser purity stage. After all, the moment they reached 15%, the first passive ability should be unlocked automatically. Calm and peaceful, he sat in a meditation position with the injection needle close to his heart. He took a long inhale and called for Asna. "Are you ready?" "Go ahead, I will keep a lookout," Asna replied in utter boredom. "Here we go." He smiled and stabbed his heart with the injection needle, forcing all of its content inside his heart. Without delay, he took advantage of those precious few minutes of calmness and drank all the potions needed to facilitate the awakening process. After drinking them, he relaxed his muscles and closed his eyes. Only a minute left before the first wave strikes. "I am thankful to Mom and Dad for having me and thank." Before he finished his awakening ritual or whatever that was, he got interrupted by a noisy exclamation from Asna. "What the hell am I seeing?" Just as Felix wanted to scold her for ruining his focus, he closed his mouth shut as he listened in disbelief to her random bullshit. "Felix, you need to hear this." Her bloodshot eyes had a hint of images that were being displayed at the speed of light. "I'm forcefully reading the memories of this bloodline as we speak, and I just found out that there are actually 3 bloodlines mixed in it." She closed her eyes and reopened them again. But this time, those images were gone. She massaged her eyelids and clarified what she meant in a faster pace. "The first one is from the heavy anaconda and the second one is from the green mamba. Yet, the most terrifying one is the bloodline of an ancestral beast called the Midgard serpent, or in the language of his worshippers J. Rumonginger." Felix immediately lost it and scolded her. "What the fuck are you talking about? This is not the time to joke around, Asna. I will bombard by waves of pain soon. So leave me alone." Asna didn't have the time to explain everything to him since the process of awakening would begin soon. So, she just said one thing that tempted Felix to take her words seriously. The J. Rumonginder is the poison element primogenitor. It was born at the beginning of the universe with full control on the element of poison. Astonished and honestly quite disbelieving in the nonsense he just heard, Felix's calm focused eyes couldn't help but bulge out. However, Asna quickly changed the subject and asked him urgently. "Tell me quick. Do you want me to filter the other 2 bloodlines, leaving only 1% of the ancestral being that I found, or you want to continue with normal awakening?" She rushed him again. "Decide fast, as the moment integrations start I can't do much." "Do it, I trust in your judgment." Felix agreed without hesitation, or even pausing for a second to check if Asna was just pulling a prank on him. "Good, you won't regret it." Asna smiled happily after not hearing those words for eons. Without wasting any more time, she filtered 19% of the Anamamba bloodline from the pure 1% J. Ramungandra bloodline and then unexpectedly stored it inside his body. It seemed like it still could be removed from the body without issues, which was honestly quite understandable, as Asna's cosmic social status was so high within the universe. Even the J. Ramungandra bloodline could only obediently be manipulated by her. Don't even mention those low-tiered bloodlines. All new Haptors NNV, lbin.com. But this control and oppression were valid only because this was just a bloodline. Otherwise, if the ancestral beast was here in his flesh, Asna's social status wouldn't mean shit to him. He might show respect but not total obedience. Shortly after, she finished manipulating the bloodlines and informed Felix, "I am done, now you won't deal with 10 waves of pain but just one, since you will awaken with only 1%. Felix sighed in relief after hearing that. At least there was some good news after his whopping 20% got butchered to merely 1%. However, before his relief took root, a sentence from Asna sent him to the depth of the despair. Even though it's just 1%, you should expect the pain to at least triple, as well as the duration. Good luck, I'm cheering for you." Asna clapped her hands cutely after delivering such heart-wrenching news. "You by Arif." His curse was cut in half by a high-pitched shriek that escaped from his mouth, marking the beginning of his awakening. All of Felix's bravado and toughness he showed before in the awakening mock practice was no more, as he kept thrashing on the ground with his hands smashing everything that near him. If the bottles weren't made of tough glass material, they would have been shattered by him already. Fortunately for Felix, his pitiful wails and cries were being confined inside his room, as it was soundproof. The only spectator to this pathetic charade was Asna, who already found a comfortable lying position on the misty couch with her arm hugging a bucket of popcorn. Her wide smile and delightful eyes were clear proof that she was enjoying watching Felix getting tortured like this. Inside Felix's body, immense changes were occurring on his nucleus cell that hosted the human DNA code. Yet, currently, this sacred code was being tempered by foreign genes that invaded the majority of Felix's cells and started to fit themselves somehow, without killing their host. This was the main reason why the integration process was always painful without any way to stop it. The only thing that was possible was reducing its duration, or in other words, hasten the process to end faster. A simple analogy of what was truly happening to Felix's body now was to simply consider the human body as a vase made of clay. The awakening process tries to reshape the already made vase without breaking it into pieces, either by adding an extra handle or making the base wider or thinner. It all depended on the bloodline unique characteristics, thus resulting in mutations that could range from either having a different hair color or growing an extra limb or a tail. Those mutations could get removed only by replacing the bloodline with another. But even this method wasn't successful all the time, as in some cases, the mutation might stay permanently after the bloodliner etched an ability in his human 1% bloodline. A plausible reason for why so was that the ability held the same genes of the mutation itself. For example, if a bloodliner had a third eye in the middle of his forehead, and he decided to keep an ability that could be activated only by that third eye, the mutation was going to remain permanently following its ability. It was just common sense. Now Felix's body had already started to display some mutations after a couple of minutes in this process. Firstly, his height increased by 3 centimeters all at once, pushing him to reach 180 centimeters. He could finally call himself tall proudly. Secondly, his hair got longer and glossier. Then its color began to transform from blonde to a spring light green with a hint of dark purple shade at its tips. A breathtaking combination that could make girls trade everything in their possession to have a single strand. Yet, the biggest mutation only took place after nearing the end of the awakening, and it happened to his eyes. As his pupil turned into dreadful slits with dark violet irises surrounding them, resembling a field of midnight rose, circling around an eerie smooth crack on the ground. Those mutations could be said to be quite low-key when compared to having bone claws or a bushy long monkey tail. After his eyes transformation, nothing else changed from his body, since 1% bloodline wasn't able to change much. To do so, one must use a higher percentage of a bloodline during the awakening or in replacement. In fact, if Felix continued with the original plan and used a 20% bloodline, serpent scales were definitely going to cover his body. That was one of the main reasons he wanted to awaken by that large amount, since he knew that those scales were going to add an extra layer of defense naturally. But now, he could only obtain other mutations in his first replacement. A few minutes later, Felix's body that was twitching like he was having a seizure stopped moving at once. If it wasn't for his chest that was rising and falling slightly, anyone would have assumed that he failed to awaken. After a while, Felix slowly opened his muddled eyes, while lying naked on a pool of sweat mixed with some blood that originated from his eye's mutation. Finally, it ended. I can't believe I almost fainted during the process. Thank God Asna intervened and called for me. He thought with agitation at such a close shave. He truly was blindsided by the pain getting tripled from what he was used to. Yet, that wasn't even the real reason he struggled to survive the awakening, but actually it was the long duration that increased from 6 minutes to a whopping 16 minutes. Felix's best record in the mock practice was pulling through one wave of pain for 20 minutes. However, the awakening that he just went through was the same as dealing with 3 waves in that duration. Something he clearly wasn't ready for. You almost got me killed, Asna. He scolded her while staring at the ceiling with bloodied eyes that allowed him to see everything in red. And what's wrong with my eyes? Did I awaken ability at 1%? This has never happened before to anyone. He grinned, wondering, maybe this is because of the ancestral bloodline? So badass to be able to see everything in red. Your blood is blocking your vision, you retard. She facepalmed and chided him, get a grip, you are embarrassing the Rumungandra bloodline. She truly began to regret advising this idiot to merge with a primogenitor bloodline, as she felt that he did not deserve even an ounce of blood from a being that was born in the early days of the universe. Though so as well. I just wanted to mess with you. Not embarrassed in the slightest, Felix tried to clean his eyes from the blood, but pain assaulted him immediately as he moved his hand. His body desperately needed a full treatment. Otherwise, he would need months to recover. Good thing he prepared a rejuvenation potion, which accelerates the recovery process vastly. To the point, his body could return to its peak form within a couple of minutes. So he picked the potion from the ground with some difficulty and drank it quickly. After doing so, a pleasant feeling welcomed him, like bathing in a cold spring during the heat of summer. Anyone who felt this pleasure would wish for it to be everlasting. Sadly, it stayed for only 2 minutes before its potency declined, marking the successful ending of the treatment. Felix immediately stood up and started stretching his body fully, creating a symphony of loud cracking noises. It sounded exactly like every bone in his body was displaced. I never felt better in my life, he said with a wide beaming smile. After cracking all of his joints, he suddenly noticed his long glossy green hair that touched the ground with its dark purple tips. Not bad at all. He examined the silky soft strands with eyes full of praise. I wonder what Olivia will say, after seeing that mine is better looking than hers. He wondered in amusement over his next encounter with Ollie, since she had green hair as well. Whatever, I have more pressing things to take care of now than my mutation. Solemn, he let go of his hair and asked, Asna, mind explaining the situation from the top again with more details this time? He crossed his arm and sat back on the floor again. It was clear that understanding his new bloodline was a priority to him than cleaning himself up or his room. Do you want the long version or the short one? She asked, smiling. Of course, the long version. The more details you provide, the more understanding I will have on this bloodline. So try not to miss anything that can be crucial later on. As you wish. She took a deep breath and said, to understand the bloodline you just merged with, you need first to know the history of the primogenitors of elements. You see, in the very early days of the universe, each known element had a primogenitor that has total control and rule over it. What do you mean by total control? His confusion was quite comprehensible, as he never heard of such a concept before. Even the public data in the UVR never mentioned a word about the existence of the primogenitors and their ways of using the elements. The only thing he was positive about was that the beasts in the universe were able to only use the same 6 abilities they awakened during their growing phase. That was it. They could never suppress the number, nor change the abilities. They were stuck from birth to death with one set of abilities they inherited from their parents. The only known way to break those shackles was for them to evolve. But that was a whole other story. I meant exactly what you heard. Total control and manipulation. She changed her tone to contempt. But before she continued on, she remembered the last lesson of looking down on the human bloodline system. So she coughed and returned to her normal tone. You see, both humans and beasts don't really control the elements no matter how high their element affinity is. She fought the urge to sneer and clarified, you were simply using already created abilities without even knowing how they were created, and who created them. In other words, the abilities that you use are registered in your bloodline, and all you have to do is think of them and they will automatically be activated. She paused for a second, then said the crucial information she was building for. But in reality, all of them were but simply creations of the primogenitors, who could manipulate the elements to create what they desire without any limitations on numbers or such. Agitated, Felix's heart began to beat faster and faster as he listened to the astonishing power of those beings. Yet, he did not interrupt her. So in this sense, the abilities that you obtain from beasts are but ones used by the primogenitors before and passed down to their descendants via bloodline. She paused for a second and dropped a bombshell on him. This means beasts were actually but normal creatures without any elemental powers, just like your human race. But after being mated by the primogenitors, their offspring obtained the blessing of their parents, thus getting some of their abilities marked in their bloodline. You can easily infer the rest. Asna ended her explanation with a yawn, too lazy to carry on speaking. She was truly struggling to not fall asleep. Felix easily figured out what happened after. It was as clear as daylight that those descendants must have been able to pass their bloodline further down the tree by mating with different types of beasts, thus creating new species that could use unique abilities, 2 elements, or more of such varieties. The primogenitors provided the foundation, and the descendants enhanced it over the long period of years to reach its current state. And we humans took advantage of this diversity and created a usable path to gain strength just like other races. He couldn't help but sigh dejectedly at the conclusion he arrived at. Correct, this is why I said before that your path was limited and not complete, since you guys are leeching from beasts' powers, who are also leeching from their ancestral powers. PFFFF, so fucking funny. She finally couldn't handle it and broke into jeering laughter with hands holding her sides. Felix wasn't even mad after being shamed like this. The only thing he felt was pure embarrassment at his human race. After all, the bloodline system that humans took pride in was merely a byproduct of leeching from leeches, which made it even worse. No wonder Asna berated his race power system before without mercy. But don't worry, now that you have the Ramungandra bloodline, you will have a quite high chance of unlocking his poison element manipulation. She wiped her tears and comforted him. At that point, you will be able to learn and create an unlimited number of poison abilities. Before Felix could feel happy at this great news, he heard Asna murmur softly, "But you will have to provide me with high-tiered beasts that use the element of poison, so I can extract more of his bloodline." She suggested, "And it's better if the species were serpents just like their forefather." Felix's eyes almost rolled at the back of his head at such dastardly news. He knew that the bottomless pit of his path just turned into an abyss that was impossible to fill, no matter how many coins he obtained. After all, while the rest of humans only needed to buy 2 bloodline bottles or a maximum of 3 to reach origin purity, Felix, on the other hand, had to buy multiple bloodlines bottles just to finish 99% of the J. Ramungandra bloodline. He really felt indignant about this. But who could blame him? He was just planning to close the hole that affinity rating would cause to his bank account by investing in movies. But now another bigger hole had appeared that probably was going to drain every coin he had or was about to earn, just to reach the first stage of replacement. Don't even mention other stages. Forget it, I just need to double down on my investment plan. Things might turn better by then, hopefully. Downcast, he massaged his eyelids with heavy shoulders. He could already envision his future of running everywhere to earn coins just to support his bloodline path. "You don't have to worry about coins since I can store the other filtered bloodline to sell later." Asna tried to uplift his spirit a bit by mentioning what she did during the bloodline manipulation. Felix's saddened expression immediately brightened up at her words. Although, he knew that the price wouldn't be the same when he tries to sell it, due to his unknown reputation. But still, it was better than buying tier 5, 6, or even 7 bloodlines just to extract a little percentage of the J. Ramungandra bloodline. Then throw them in the garbage. My heart can't handle such a way of wasting resources. He sighed in relief and suddenly asked, "But how are you able to do this? I thought you had no control over my body." "Indeed, I can't do that yet. But the bloodline you forcefully tried to merge with is a foreign object, and by using my social status to oppress it, I can manipulate it however I wish in your body." She answered him while stretching her arms lazily, like a cat. "I see, so where is it currently? And why can't I feel it?" He wondered about the way she managed to store it in his body. "Are you stupid?" She rolled her eyes at his retarded question and explained, "Of course, the bloodline is swimming peacefully in your bloodstream. And with my orders, it can only obediently swim without having thoughts of merging with you." She chuckled and added, "There is no need for me to collect it and store it as a ball or something, you idiot." "Fuck. You don't have to insult me. How would I know about your perverse ways? You share absolutely nothing with me about yourself." He retorted in irritation. "Let's keep it that way." After leaving that sentence, she covered herself with a blanket, preparing to continue her sleep. Visit novilbin.c/m for the L-test updates. Unfortunately, Felix still had many questions unanswered. "Well, now you should tell me about this J. Ramungandra and his story." Eager, he narrowed his eyes in focus, not wanting to miss anything about him. Asna removed her blanket with an annoyed expression. "I don't know much about his story, since I only saw random bits and pieces about his existence from those memories. Just tell me what you know already." He hurried her to cough up everything. Unbothered by his impatience, Asna closed her eyes peacefully and entered her storytelling mode with a soft voice. The J. Ramungandra primogenitor was born to manage and control the poison element in the universe. Any race that relied on poison could only worship him and bow to his greatness. The majority didn't do so out of respect, but merely to not bring his wrath upon them, since he could easily chain their race from using his element, thus leaving them naked to everyone's aggression. This was during the early days of the universe, way before even the Dark Ages era. That period of time was being referred to as the Primogenitor's era. It was called as such, due to their never-ending roaming within the universe and obtaining the worship of every race that uses their element. However, because they entangled themselves with mortal lives, they had to face the consequences of dealing with their affairs. Wars, betrayals, massacres, and sacrilegious actions, like destroying the primogenitor statues, pushed those ancestral beings into having constant friction between them. Some were easily resolved, while some turned into an enmity that could be solved only by death. They are not immortal? Felix didn't want to interrupt her, but he couldn't help it after hearing such boggling news. He believed that since they had such a high status in the universe, they should possess immortality like Asna. Well, they could live for eternity without problems. She gave a half shrug while sleeping, but they were not unkillable like my race. I see, no wonder information about them was non-existent in the UVR. They must have died at some point in time. Felix nodded his head in understanding. His conclusion was based only on what she said. After all, she mentioned indirectly that primogenitors were socially active in the universe. So for them to have no presence at all in this era, it meant only that either they died or were asleep somewhere. Heck, they might even be sealed by someone like it happened to Asna. I don't know about others, but the J. Rumungandr definitely died. Before letting Felix interrupt her again and delay her time of returning to sleep, she explained, I saw his death in those memories. It was during a battle against the Thunder Primogenitor. I didn't see the full battle, but only the last few seconds of it. She yawned and continued softly, forcing Felix to focus on her mosquito buzzing tone. I saw that the Thunder Primogenitor smashed a colossal hammer on the head of the Midgard serpent. The blow was so powerful, 3 planets nearby were turned to dust by its aftershock. Goosebumps coursed through Felix's naked upper body, making him shiver in coldness and excitement. His heartbeats quicked after imagining such a godly battle. He really wished he was there to spectate it. Just as he opened his mouth, Asna interrupted him. The Thunder Primogenitor died soon after landing his blow. To be exact, he stopped breathing immediately after moving 9 meters forward. Probably due to a poison inflicted by J. Rumungandr. This is all I managed to see. If you want more information, get me as much as possible of his bloodline. Now let me sleep in peace. She shooed him away and cut off the connection, not wanting to hear a single word from him anymore. This time, Felix left her be, as she already shared everything that she knew. Thank you, Asna. He didn't know if she heard him or not, but Felix wasn't an ungrateful prick to not show gratitude when it's due. Asna truly deserved to be thanked after today's effort. She might have been lazy for the past months, but immediately after making her move, she proved that her assistance was by far the greatest cheat he could have ever asked for. Felix stood up, planning to go clean himself up. As for the 19% Anamamba bloodline that was still in his body, he decided to leave it be for now since no harm was done to his body. But, most importantly, he didn't want to ruin Asna's sleep again. He walked towards the bathroom naked with his eyebrows frowned. Only now did his nasty smell assaulted his nose. Thus, he ignored everything and jumped straight inside the shower. 15 minutes later. He stepped outside, dragging his long wet hair behind him like he was pulling a truck. I really need a haircut, at least cut it to shoulder length, lest it hinders my training. He thought while dragging his heavy hair next to the mirror of the bathroom. The moment he saw his reflection on it, an out-loud exclamation escaped his mouth. Who the fuck are you? Well, that's all for this part, truckers. See you all in the next video.